Chapter 1357. As expected, Chen Yuanyuan's attention was diverted. She had seen a lot of people from all walks of life in Qinhuai River and knew that people in the martial arts world did have similar eccentricities. Song Qingshu coughed. After the test just now, Madam is indeed a person with a pure character, so I can pass this martial art to you without worry. Chen Yuanyuan could not remember what happened after she was affected by the soul transfer spell. Otherwise, if she heard Song Qingshu talking nonsense with a serious face, she would probably slap him in the face. At this time, she was dizzy listening to him, but she roughly understood that he wanted to teach her martial arts. She could not help but feel happy. After all, no woman could resist the temptation of eternal youth. However, she quickly frowned. But at my age, my meridians have long been closed. I'm afraid that I won't be able to learn anything from learning martial arts from the beginning. Although she did not know martial arts, she had been around many martial arts masters in the first half of her life, so she knew some general knowledge. Yes, generally speaking, Song Qingshu nodded, but this martial art of mine is very magical. It can let people who don't know martial arts quickly cultivate a powerful, true qi. Really? Chen Yuanyuan asked doubtfully. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. Madam should have heard of my reputation in the martial arts world. If I say it's possible, it's naturally possible. The disdain that he showed at this moment reminded Chen Yuanyuan that other than being a dominating overlord, he was also a famous master in the martial arts world. She no longer had any doubts in her heart. That's great. In fact, she was not interested in practicing martial arts. After all, with her beauty that could cause the downfall of cities and countries, countless martial arts masters would sell their lives for her with just a snap of her fingers. However, the temptation of having the chance to maintain her youth after obtaining inner force was too great for her, so much so that she was jumping for joy like a little girl. However, Chen Yuanyuan had experienced too many things in her life. She quickly calmed down from her initial excitement. Since this martial art is so miraculous, it must be something extremely precious. As the saying goes, there is no reward for nothing. I cannot accept young master's kindness. Song Qingshu admired the woman in front of him very much. Perhaps more than 10 years ago, she was a beautiful woman who could bring disaster to the country and the people. Now, she had washed away all her splendor and became mature and elegant. Unlike ordinary little girls, she knew how to behave. Under such a great temptation, she could still stay sober and knew that there was no free lunch in this world. You worry too much, Song Qingshu explained with a smile. Aren't we friends? Besides, it's just a piece of cake for me. Chen Yuanyuan still shook her head. I already owe young master enough. If I continue to owe you, I'm afraid I won't be able to repay you in this lifetime. Free things were often the most expensive. Most girls didn't understand this, but she was different. After all these years of ups and downs, she had already seen through the nature of men. Although Song Qingshu might not have any bad intentions right now, which man didn't want her to repay him with her body in the end? Noticing the cautiousness between her brows, Song Qingshu could not help but feel pity for her. He knew that she had suffered too much in the first half of her life to be so cautious. Hasn't Madam already paid back what you owe me? Chen Yuanyuan was stunned. What do you mean? Song Qingshu smiled and said, Didn't we agree before that Madam would drink with me to repay me for saving your life? Now that the wine has been drunk, the debt of saving your life is even. That was just a joke. How can a mere drinking with you make up for the debt of saving your life? Chen Yuanyuan said anxiously. Song Qingshu shook his head. If it was an ordinary woman drinking with me, it indeed can't make up for the debt of saving my life. But Madam is different. Madam is famous in the world. Countless men in the world want to say a word to Madam, but can't. But I can have Madam accompany me to drink with a smile. It's definitely a blessing of 3 lifetimes. A mere life-saving debt is nothing. Young master, Chen Yuanyuan's heart seemed to be hit by something. She understood that he deliberately said this to comfort her, and she could not help but feel a surge of warmth in her heart. Aren't we friends? It's really awkward for Madam to call me young master. Song Qing-shu scratched the back of his head. In the future, Madam can just call me Qing-shu. Chen Yuanyu rolled her eyes at him. Aren't you also calling me Madam? It doesn't seem like you really treat me as a friend. Song Qing-shu raised an eyebrow. Then I'll call you Yuan Yuan. Chen Yuanyuan spat softly, and a blush appeared on her cheeks. Tui, I'm so much older than you. Who said you're older than me? If you don't believe me, we can go to the streets and ask anyone. 9 out of 10 people will think that you're my younger sister. Song Qing-shu said seriously. With that mouth of yours, no wonder UNG Mimi is completely under your control. Although she knew that he was talking nonsense, which woman didn't like to be praised? Chen Yuanyuan was amused by him and couldn't stop giggling. It took her a while to recover. How can you call me like that? It's not appropriate. Song Qing-shu knew that she would definitely not agree to him calling her so intimately, so he did not look disappointed. In that case, I'll call you Yuan Yuan Jia like UNG. Then, okay. Chen Yuanyuan originally intended to let him call her aunt so that she could keep a sufficient distance from him. However, she always felt that this would be suspicious of taking advantage of him, so she finally gave up after thinking about it. Yuan Yuan Jia, Yuan Yuan Jia. Song Qing-shu deliberately lengthened his tone. Coupled with his question of punctuation, it sounded like he was calling the other party's nickname very intimately. Hearing this, Chen Yuanyuan's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly changed the topic. If Ah Kun knows that we call each other sister and brother, she will definitely be angry. She is a generation lower for no reason. At that time, that girl will have to call you uncle. Imagining her daughter's angry look, Chen Yuanyuan couldn't help but show a faint smile on her lips. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be stunned. When the time comes, we'll have our own seniority. I'll call you big sister and Akka little sister. In any case, when you two stand together, you look more like sisters to outsiders. Chen Yuanyuan seemed to feel the heat of his gaze. She slightly turned her face away. You can call me whatever you want. Song Qing-shu realized that his gaze was too invasive. He inwardly cried out in shame and withdrew his gaze. Sister Yuan Yuan, the reason why I want to teach you martial arts, in addition to us being friends, is also a little selfishness as a man. Chen Yuanyuan's heart skipped a beat, and she gradually stopped smiling. Song Qing-shu seemed to not notice the change in her expression. He continued to say, Sister Yuan Yuan, your beauty is a collection of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It is a work of art made by the gods of nature. If it gradually disappears in the years, it will really make people sad. So, out of selfishness, I hope that this perfect work of art can exist forever in the world. I hope that Sister Yuan Yuan will not reject my selfishness. Hearing this, Chen Yuanyuan blushed. It's not as incredible as you make it sound. It's just a stinky body. If it's a stinky body, wouldn't other people in the world be so ashamed that they would commit suicide? Worried that she still couldn't put down her pride, Song Qing-shu smiled and took out a booklet from his bosom. Sister Yuan Yuan, first practice this martial art and build a good foundation of internal energy. Then, I will teach you the everlasting youth art to keep you young. Chen Yuanyuan really didn't refuse this time. Looking at the ordinary booklet in front of her, she couldn't help but wonder, can this let me learn profound internal energy? Don't be fooled by its ordinary appearance. It is the supreme divine martial art of India. It is called Shinzu Sutra of Samadhi Desire to achieve Shinzu Sutra, Song Qing-shu explained. Its cultivation method is different from the martial arts of the Central Plains. It focuses more on the training of a human body's muscles and bones and develops the human body's potential. It is most suitable for people who have no foundation in martial arts. Because the original version of Shinzu Sutra was written in the Sanskrit muscle bone strengthening scripture, it was really inconvenient to take it out. So, he made a few copies and gave one to Li Yuanji. He still had more in his hands. Really? Chen Yuanyuan's face was full of surprise, but soon she showed a look of embarrassment. But how do I practice this secret manual? She had never practiced martial arts before, so naturally, she had no idea. This martial art is a bit difficult for men to practice, but women are born with good flexibility, so it's much easier to practice. Song Qing-shu flipped to a page, pointed at the little person on it and said, "There are detailed diagrams on it. Follow the posture of these diagrams and circulate your true chi along the lines inside, and you'll be able to practice this divine skill." He didn't lie. Practicing Shinzu Sutra required the practitioner to make a lot of anti-human postures. In the original work, he was also able to practice Tanyu by chance. At that time, he was poisoned, which caused his muscles to spasm and twisted into a few postures. That was how he got started. For ordinary people, they had to bear great pain to make those postures. If they were not careful, their muscles and ligaments would receive irreversible damage. Chun Yuan originally thought that the profound martial arts must be recorded in extremely obscure words, so she was worried that she would not be able to learn it and make a fool of herself in front of Song Qingshu. Now that she knew that it was just a simple picture, she could not help but feel happy. However, after casually flipping through 2 pictures, she faintly felt a sense of familiarity. Why do I feel like I have a sense of déjà vu? Of course I'm familiar with it. Song Qingshu pointed at a picture in the book and said with a smile, "The pose you made last night was this picture." Ah! Chun Yuan finally reacted and instantly threw away the book in her hand, as if it was scalding hot. Her already charming face became even more charming. "I'm not practicing anymore." "What?" Song Qingshu snickered in his heart, but on the surface, he looked puzzled. "You know why?" Chun Yuan rolled her eyes at him impatiently. When she thought of the embarrassing posture last night, she felt like she was about to explode. This is not a proper martial art. Song Qingshu's eyes were sharp, and he quickly grabbed the secret book to prevent it from falling into the soup. This is a proper Indian divine skill. How is it not proper? How is it proper to let a woman make that kind of posture? Chun Yuan did not need to touch it to know that her face was burning. No matter if the practitioner is a man or a woman, they have to make all kinds of strange postures. These postures are called yoga in India, and they can be used to train one's physique. Because of this, it is suitable for people who do not have a foundation in martial arts to practice. Seeing that the other party did not believe him, Song Qingshu had no choice but to say, "You must have seen Yuanji make these postures last night. She was practicing this divine skill." Chun Yuan spat. "Bah, she was obviously catering to you." When she thought of the scene she saw last night, her heart beat faster and faster. One must know that she was born in a brothel, and even Qinhuai River did not have anyone who dared to play in such a way. It was obvious how shocking the scene last night was. Chapter 1358. This. Chun Yuan was tempted, but she was still hesitant. After all, in her opinion, these cultivation postures were too shameful. Song Qingshu saw her hesitation and decided to add fuel to the fire. "Sister Yuan, if you practice this martial arts, you could be ranked among the top masters in Jianghu in terms of internal force. Not to mention that you can learn the art of eternal youth. You also have the power to protect yourself. At that time, you and Aku will be free." How free you will be? Chun Yuan was finally convinced. Although the temptation of eternal youth was great, how could it compare to true freedom? All these years, because she had no ability to resist at all, she could only listen to other people's arrangements. If she had enough power, not only herself, but even Aku could be free. "Okay, I'll practice." Chun Yuan's eyes became firm. "Go to your room or my room?" Song Qingshu asked with a smile. Chun Yuan didn't respond for a moment. "Why do you want to go to your room?" Song Qingshu spread his hands. "You don't want to practice here, do you?" Chun Yuan looked around. Not to mention that this was the hall. Someone might come over at any time. Moreover, the table was full of cold leftovers, and the air was filled with the smell of alcohol. Women loved cleanliness by nature. This was indeed not a good place to practice. "I'll go back to my room to practice. You don't have to bother me," Chun Yuan whispered. What a joke. This kind of cultivation posture was shameful enough. If a man saw it, she would not want to live. Song Qingshu said with a wry smile, "Sister Yuan, are you worried that I will take advantage of you?" Chun Yuan's face was slightly red. Although she didn't speak, her eyes clearly said so. Song Qingshu had to explain, Sister Yuan, you have never practiced martial arts. You know nothing about meridians and acupoints. You don't even know how to chi flow. How can you practice alone? Chen Yuan was speechless for a moment. She knew that he was telling the truth, but it was too embarrassing to be with him. Seeing her stuttering and hesitating, Song Qing-shu finally lost his patience. He walked up to her and carried her in his arms as she cried out in surprise. "What are you doing?" Chen Yuan tried to push him away, but her strength was like an ant compared to Song Qing-shu's. "Since you can't make a decision, I'll make it for you." Song Qing-shu glared at her fiercely. "We're clearly friends. What's wrong with helping you practice? If you think those positions are shameful, it's not like I didn't see them yesterday. I even helped you unlock them. That's different." Hearing him mention what happened yesterday, Chen Yuan wished there was a hole in the ground to hide in. What's the difference? Besides, Song Qing-shu snorted and finally used his trump card. "We had an even more intimate relationship in the Imperial Palace. Are you still afraid that I'm watching from the side?" Chen Yuan moaned and almost fainted. In order to avoid the palace guards who searched the cold palace, the two of them hid in the dark and narrow space under the bed. Both sides knew what happened, but the two of them seemed to have a tacit understanding not to mention it again. Chen Yuan thought that the matter was over, but the other party brought it up again. Seeing Chen Yuan burying her head in his chest like an ostrich, her exposed neck and ears were already completely red. How could she still say any words of rejection? Song Qing-shu laughed inwardly. Previously, when he tried to be nice to her, she made all sorts of excuses. Now, when he tried to be forceful, she actually gave in. It was no wonder that in those idol dramas in his previous life, the war men could only be spare tires. The male leads were all evil, wild, and overbearing CEOs. He carried Chen Yuan all the way to the inner hall. Feeling the warm body in his arms and the soft touch, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. No wonder so many men in the world were crazy for her. After hesitating for a moment, Song Qing-shu finally chose to carry her into her own room. After all, he was going to teach her martial arts. She should be more relaxed in her own room. He gently placed Chen Yuan on the bed. Seeing her hugging her knees with her face still red and her head buried between her legs, Song Qing-shu coughed and placed the Shinzu scripture in front of her. "Sister Yuan, let's start learning the first picture now, okay?" Chen Yuan raised her head, bit her lip, and stared at him hatefully. She thought to herself, "You just mentioned that matter, and now you're pretending that nothing happened. Are you deliberately teasing me?" But at least this way, she could avoid embarrassment. Chen Yuan hesitated for a moment, but she still took the opportunity to pretend that nothing had happened. She began to look at the first picture. "You should be familiar with this picture. It's the posture you made yesterday. Now you can do it again." There was no awkwardness or abnormality in Song Qing-shu's tone. He had already thought it through. If he showed a little embarrassment, Chen Yuan would only be more embarrassed. It was very easy for her to be possessed by the devil. It was better to use a business-like tone to calm her down. Sure enough, when Chen Yuan heard that she had to put on the posture yesterday again, a strong sense of shame surged in her heart. She looked up at Song Qing-shu, but saw that his face was as usual, and his body seemed to emit a majestic and upright light. "What the hell, why do I have this feeling?" Chen Yuan secretly spat. Now that things had come to this point, she had also thought it through. The two of them had experienced more shameful things, so this was nothing. "Okay." Chen Yuan calmed down and put on the strange and shameful posture yesterday on the bed again. Song Qing-shu's eyes brightened. Chen Yuan was indeed a natural beauty. Sister Yuanji, a teenage girl, had to try a few times before succeeding. Chen Yuan was older by more than a year, but she could do these positions so easily. "Have you seen enough?" Although Chen Yuan could not see what Song Qing-shu was doing from her current position, she did not need to look at him and know that he was staring at her. Hearing her pout and anger, Song Qing-shu subconsciously replied, "I won't feel enough even if I look at it for a lifetime." Chen Yuan was speechless. She did not expect him to be so confident, and she did not know how to respond. She hesitated for a moment before asking, "What should I do next?" "Okay." Song Qing-shu was worried that he would drool, so he wiped his mouth and replied, "Concentrate your mind and recall the acupuncture points on the portrait. Imagine that there's a stream of air flowing through those acupuncture points." "Okay." Chen Yuanyuan closed her eyes, as if she was slowly condensing her qi. However, not long after, her eyebrows gradually furrowed. Song Qing-shu had been observing her state. Seeing this, he asked, "What's wrong?" "I don't know those acupuncture points, so it's hard for me to memorize them. Every time I finally feel a bit of qi, I can't remember where to go next. I can only open my eyes to look, and when I open my eyes, the qi will disappear." Chen Yuanyuan said awkwardly. She felt that she was definitely the kind of person who had a particularly poor aptitude for martial arts. Knowing that her mind was extremely sensitive, Song Qing-shu did not blame her. Instead, he comforted her. "Actually, from another perspective, it's fortunate that you are cautious enough. If you remembered a wrong acupuncture point and try to force your way through, it was very likely that you would go berserk." Chen Yuanyuan had been dealing with men all her life, so how could she not hear that he was comforting her? She could not help but secretly sigh. Although he is a bit of a rascal sometimes, he is really a gentle man sometimes. Let me teach you how to recognize the acupuncture points. That way, you can remember a bit more. Song Qing-shu stretched out his hand to press on her body as he said, "I will press all the acupuncture points in this diagram once so that you can remember the route of qi circulation." Seeing Song Qing-shu's fingers reaching out to her neck, Chen Yuanyuan's whole body trembled. This is not very convenient." Song Qing-shu smiled faintly. "What's inconvenient about it? Which part of your body haven't I touched?" Chen Yuanyuan's breath stopped, and she immediately withdrew her evaluation of him in her heart. For a moment, she was ashamed and embarrassed, and could not speak at all. "Okay, calm your mind." Song Qing-shu patted her lightly and began to explain each acupuncture point to her. Chen Yuanyuan's heart trembled, and as expected, she began to focus. The effect was much better when Song Qing-shu explained and demonstrated at the same time. As his fingers moved, she gradually felt that there was really a flow of qi in her body, which was completely different from the fleeting feeling before. This time, the qi was always there, and she could not help but say excitedly, "I feel it. I feel it." Song Qing-shu was speechless. When practicing martial arts, you must avoid great sorrow or great joy. When you were excited, the qi that you had just gathered dispersed again. You have to start again. Chen Yuanyuan stuck out her tongue guiltily. However, the feeling of having qi flow for the first time was too magical, and it was no wonder that she could not help it. "This time, don't be excited again." Song Qing-shu glared at her and began to guide the qi for her again. Just now, Chen Yuanyuan was worried that she would not be able to remember the acupuncture points, so she had been focusing on practicing. Now that she was doing it again, she suddenly noticed the heat coming from Song Qing-shu's fingertips, and her face became even redder. As Song Qing-shu continued to press, he suddenly felt Chen Yuanyuan's body become softer and softer. He looked down and saw that her peach blossom eyes were covered with a dense layer of mist, and her watery eyes were full of blurriness. Her moist red lips opened and closed, as if she was silently panting. Song Qing-shu's heart was beating wildly, and with great willpower, he looked away and asked in a hoarse voice, "Do you remember the qi flow route in the first diagram?" "Yes, I do." Chen Yuanyuan's voice at this time was a little more shaky than usual. "Then let's practice the second diagram, and try to help you practice it once today. After that, you will be able to practice according to those routes on your own." Song Qing-shu swallowed his saliva and said with great difficulty, "Okay." Chen Yuanyuan's cheeks were also very hot, and she said in a small voice, "Help. Help me. I'm stuck again." Looking at her gentle posture, Song Qing-shu felt a ball of fire burning in his lower abdomen. "Then bear with the pain. I will help you smooth it out." Chapter 1359. He reached out to hold Chen Yuanyuan's legs. The soft touch made Song Qing-shu feel like he was about to turn into a beast. In order to avoid making a fool of himself, he had to divert his attention. This is the second time. It seems that you still have to ask me to protect you when you practice Shinzu scripture in the future. Otherwise, what will you do if you get stuck again? Chen Yuanyuan's face was as red as a rose. It was unknown whether it was because of this or because of Song Qingshu's grip on her legs. Bah, my flexibility is actually quite good. It's mainly because I haven't exercised for many years that my body is a little stiff. I'll get used to it after a few times. There were many beauties in Qinhuai River in those days. She could stand out not only because of her beauty, but also because of her talent. Besides the pipa, she was best at dancing. She was able to stand out in a competitive place like Qinhuai River. It could be imagined how good she was at dancing. Those who were good at dancing were all people with excellent flexibility. If Chen Yuanyuan did these strange movements in Shinzu scripture in those days, it could be said that there was no difficulty at all. Unfortunately, she had been living alone for many years and had long stopped dancing. In addition, as she grew older, her body inevitably deteriorated. Even so, Chen Yuanyuan could now relatively easily complete these strange movements that were completely impossible for ordinary people. The only drawback was that she needed help every time she unlocked it. Seeing her indignant look, Song Qingshu secretly laughed. Sometimes a woman's competitiveness was really scary. After this interruption, Song Qingshu finally freed her hands and feet. He couldn't help but secretly admire his own determination. Then let's start to practice the second picture. Chen Yuanyuan didn't open her mouth, but hummed from her throat. Turning to the second picture, the posture on it was more strange than the previous one. Chen Yuanyuan slightly frowned and tried to make the posture according to the picture. Qingshu, am I in this posture? Song Qingshu looked at it and shook his head. Not very good. Then help me. Chen Yuanyuan was also very depressed. She had always been quite proud of her flexibility. But today, she didn't know whether the posture on Shinzu scripture was too strange or she was old, but she couldn't make the posture on it. It might be a little painful. You have to bear with it. Song Qingshu reminded him. After all, many of the postures in the Shinzu scripture were inhuman. In order to complete those postures, the ligaments had to be stretched to a great extent. However, pressing the ligaments had always been a very painful thing. It was difficult for him to do it himself, so he had to rely on the help of others. It's okay, I can bear it. Chen Yuanyuan's stubbornness was also aroused at this moment. When she was learning to dance as a child, she was forced by the nannies to stretch her ligaments. It was much more painful than what she was feeling now. Song Qingshu nodded. For convenience's sake, he also climbed onto the bed and pressed one of Chen Yuanyuan's legs down in another direction. Does it hurt? Song Qingshu asked as he pressed down. A little. Chen Yuanyuan bit her lip. Go on. I can bear it. All right. Song Qingshu nodded. He was afraid that he would hurt her if he used too much force, so he didn't dare to use his hands. He could only use his body weight to press her leg down. Ouch! Chen Yuanyuan shivered in pain. Song Qingshu hurriedly asked, Did you hurt yourself? No. Chen Yuanyuan shook her head and couldn't help but smile bitterly. I haven't danced for many years. I didn't expect my body to degenerate to this extent. Song Qingshu subconsciously sighed. Your body's flexibility is already very shocking. Not many of the women around me can assume such a posture. As soon as he said this, he was stunned and immediately realized that it was not appropriate to say such words at this moment. Sure enough, Chen Yuanyuan's face instantly turned red. Only then did she realize that Song Qingshu's whole body was on top of her body. Their cheeks were so close that they could even be sensitive to each other's breath. Their posture was as ambiguous as it could be. A throb came to her heart. Chen Yuanyuan hurriedly turned her face away. Can we start practicing? Of course. Song Qingshu also came to his senses. He quickly reached out and hit the acupoint on her other meridian. This is the lung meridian of Hantaiyin. The acupoints above it are Zhongfu. Yinmen, can you say it again? You hit it too fast just now. I didn't have time to remember it. Chen Yuanyuan said awkwardly. Only then did Song Qing-shu realize that he was a little restless just now, which caused his movements to seem to have been accelerated. He said apologetically, "Then let's do it again. I'll slow down this time. This is Zhongfu. 1 inch above is Yunmen. Next two." For some reason, Chun Yuanyuan's body was getting softer and softer. It was as if all the bones in her body were melting. Song Qing-shu hurriedly abandoned his distracting thoughts and guided her to open this meridian. "Do you remember it now?" As soon as Song Qing-shu said it, the extremely hoarse feeling surprised him. "Yes." Chun Yuanyuan paused and glanced in a certain direction. She bit her lip and whispered, "You're poking me." If it was a normal girl, she would probably pretend that she didn't know. However, she was already a mature woman. In addition, the other's body reaction was too obvious. That boiling masculine aura was full of pressure. It was impossible for her to pretend that she didn't know. Song Qing-shu finally noticed the changes in his body. He said embarrassedly, "It's an instinctive reaction. I didn't mean it." "I know." Chun Yuanyuan tried to speak in a calm tone. "Can you go down first?" "Oh, okay." Song Qing-shu looked embarrassed. After all, the other party's posture was correct. He naturally had no reason to continue pressing down. Then the room fell into a strange silence. Song Qing-shu was hesitating whether he should say goodbye or not. Unexpectedly, Chun Yuanyuan said, "How about we start practicing the next diagram?" "No problem." Song Qing-shu looked at her in surprise. He began to guess what she was thinking at this time. He didn't know whether it was because her body was gradually adapting or something else. Although the next diagram's posture was a bit more difficult than the previous two diagrams, Chun Yuanyuan didn't ask Song Qing-shu for help anymore. She was able to get the posture relatively easily. Song Qing-shu secretly clicked his tongue when he saw this. At the same time, a strange thought emerged in his mind. Since she can do these difficult movements, she still asked me for help with ligament compression. Is she deliberately flirting with me? He quickly denied this speculation. After all, Chun Yuanyuan's previous reaction didn't seem to be fake. When he thought about it, he suddenly realized that her body had suddenly become softer than cotton when he was pressing down on her. This was probably the main reason. Next, Song Qing-shu taught Chun Yuanyuan the meridians and acupoints of the next few diagrams. Then he said, "Now you revise what I just taught you. I'll help you by the side." Chun Yuanyuan nodded. She also understood that it was impossible for Song Qing-shu to be by her side at all times. Only when she had thoroughly memorized this martial art would she be able to make it her own. Only then would it be convenient for her to cultivate it in the future. Looking at the beauty in front of him, who continued to put on all kinds of postures that made people want to vomit blood, Song Qing-shu secretly made up his mind to let all the women around him practice Shinzu scripture in the future. Worried that he would turn into a werewolf if he continued to watch these extremely visually impactful pictures, Song Qing-shu closed his eyes and began to silently recite the Qingxin Universal Kindness Mantra. Not long after, Song Qing-shu, who was drunk, gradually fell asleep leaning on the bed. While Chun Yuanyuan was practicing, she didn't dare to look in the direction of Song Qing-shu. She was afraid that there would be a lightning strike or something like that. Fortunately, she was immersed in Shinzu scripture, so her attention was quickly diverted. After an unknown period of time, Chun Yuanyuan finally practiced all the diagrams again. Feeling the weak but continuous circulation of genuine qi in her body, she turned her head in surprise. When she was about to tell Song Qing-shu the good news, she happened to see that he had fallen asleep. "Bah, I was worried for nothing." Chun Yuanyuan spat with a red face. Looking at his quiet face when he was asleep, Chun Yuanyuan was a little stunned. Because of the legendary status of his martial art, plus the fact that he stood on the absolutely dominant side in their relationship, she usually didn't have the opportunity to carefully examine him like this. He's usually so fierce, but now he just looks like an ordinary little man. Chun Yuanyuan slightly raised the corner of her mouth, as if she was very happy to see this scene. Chun Yuanyuan got off the bed and drank some water. When she turned her head and saw that Song Qing-shu was lying like this, she hesitated for a moment, but still walked to the bed, picked up a thin layer of blanket, and gently covered him. Who knew that when the thin blanket touched his body, Song Qing-shu suddenly opened his eyes. Before Chen Yuan could react, she only felt the world spinning, and in an instant, she was pressed under him. She didn't think that he was taking advantage of her, because his hand was like an iron clamp on her neck, as if she would die in the next moment. At this time, Song Qing-shu clearly saw that the person he was riding was Chen Yuan. The killing intent in his eyes gradually dissipated, and he slowly let go of his hand on her neck. He lightly said, "In the future, don't touch me when I'm asleep." Chen Yuan hurriedly nodded. She could be considered to have internal energy, but the killing intent that burst out from the other party just now made her feel as if the air around her had become sticky. She couldn't even move a finger. The feeling of not being able to control her own body made her tremble from the depths of her soul, as well as an instinctive submission. "You must have had a hard time these years, right?" Even though he was still riding on her, Chen Yuan didn't care at all. She looked at the violence in his eyes, and her tone was full of gentleness. "These years, I've made too many enemies, and I have no choice but to be vigilant at all times. I'm sorry for accidentally hurting you." The violence in Song Qing-shu's eyes gradually faded, and a gentle smile reappeared on his face. Seeing his smile, Chen Yuan felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. As the saying goes, it's better to let it out than to block it. If you keep suppressing your negative emotions like this, it will be even more dangerous when it explodes in the future. Song Qing-shu was startled, thinking that Chen Yuan was indeed worthy of being Chen Yuan. She was actually able to see through a man's thoughts. Even some of his close female friends by his side might not be aware of his condition, but she could see through it. Chapter 1360. Chen Yuan's heart raced when she saw the aggressive look in his eyes. She opened her mouth, but her words of rejection turned into an invitation. "If I can get rid of the negative emotions in you, then you can vent them on me." Chen Yuan's voice became softer and softer as she spoke. Her cheeks were burning hot. She didn't know why she would say such bold words. However, the domineering aura that Song Qing-shu released when he pounced on her was like a lion looking at its prey. Even though she was very afraid, her body also felt an indescribable throbbing, a tremor that came from her soul. Perhaps this was something that was engraved in the genes of women. No matter how mature and wise they were, how calm they were, or how proud and strong-willed they would always worship the strong. This was probably the reason why Song Qing-shu's previous world was so popular with domineering CEOs. Hearing her words, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be stunned. "Are you for real?" As soon as the words left his mouth, he wanted to slap himself. Saying such words at this juncture was simply hopeless. Sure enough, Chen Yuan bit her lips lightly, and her eyes seemed to be flowing with tears. "It's fake. I don't care. I already heard what you said just now." Song Qing-shu finally understood. Without saying anything else, he kissed her directly. Chen Yuan's eyes widened, and her whole body stiffened. However, she quickly relaxed under the other party's gentle kiss. Song Qing-shu felt like his body was about to explode. No man could resist the charm of the stunning Chen Yuan. Originally, he thought that he could only admire her beauty, but now he realized that he was very wrong. Thoughts could lie, but the instinctive reactions of the body couldn't. Right now, the strong reaction of the body was clearly telling him that he wanted to possess this woman in front of him. He wanted to ravage and conquer her. In fact, Song Qing-shu had always been hesitant on how to deal with the relationship between him and Chen Yuan. After all, her reputation wasn't good. If he wasn't careful, he would be cursed by the whole world. At the same time, she was Aku's mother. Although he and Aku had never fallen in love, there was always some ambiguity between them. If something happened between them, they were destined to part ways in the future. Usually, the huge moral and ethical pressure made Song Qing-shu not dare to cross the line. But now, this pressure had turned into a strong stimulation. He could no longer care about it. There was only one impulse left in his mind. He must get her, even if there was a flood after this. Not satisfied with just Chen Yuan's kiss, Song Qing-shu began to explore other positions. When Song Qing-shu began to kiss her cheeks and neck, Chen Yuanyuan finally got a chance to breathe. She put her hands on his chest and said hesitantly, "I'm older than you." Her heart was indeed full of contradictions. Although her body was full of desire and trembling, her reason kept reminding her that with the age gap between them, she could even be his elder. So what? Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. "I like this kind of mature and gentle big sister." Chen Yuanyuan had always been very confident in her charm. At her peak, she was confident that she could surpass any woman. Although her appearance hadn't faded in recent years, the worries of age gradually came to her mind. Back then, concubine Zhen was so beautiful that it caused Emperor Wendy of Wei and the King of Chun to fight for her affection. But in the end, they couldn't beat the time. As more and more young and beautiful concubines entered the harem, concubine Zhen gradually lost the emperor's favor and was almost banished to the cold palace. Chen Yuanyuan was very familiar with this period of history, so she was very sensitive to the issue of age. Therefore, Song Qingshu's answer could be said to be the most touching words of love in the world. She couldn't help but put her arms around his neck. "Qingshu." Song Qingshu didn't expect her to be so emotional. In this world, 30 years of age was indeed not young. But in Song Qingshu's view, this was another peak period for women. Thinking back to his previous life, Lin Zhiling and Gao Yuanyuan were both in their 30s. Which one of them wasn't an existence that made a group of otaku kneel and lick? Chen Yuanyuan guided Song Qingshu's hand into her clothes. Song Qingshu's breathing suddenly quickened. Although she was under the influence of the soul transfer spell, and he had also put his hand in her clothes, that situation couldn't compare to the tenderness and sweetness in her eyes when she looked at him willingly. This time, it was really like lightning striking the fire. The two quickly rolled on the bed together, leaving only the most primitive impulse in their bodies. "Sister Yuanyuan, your body is so soft." Song Qingshu finally realized that it was not his illusion. At this time, Chen Yuanyuan's body was just like cotton, making people unable to stop once they touched it. No wonder she could make those exaggerated movements of Shinzu scripture just now. "Do you like it?" Chen Yuanyuan's skin was covered with a layer of rouge-like blush, making her even more delicate and charming. "Of course I like it." Song Qingshu only felt that his mouth was dry, but he still asked out of curiosity, "Then why wasn't your body so soft at the beginning? Otherwise, you wouldn't have needed my help to make those cultivation postures of Shinzu scripture." "It's because I was pressed by you." Seeing that he was confused, Chen Yuanyuan had to explain, "My physique is a little special. Once I get aroused, my body will become softer and softer." Hearing this, Song Qingshu felt like his whole body was about to explode. He asked with difficulty, "Then when I pressed your legs just now, you got aroused?" Chen Yuanyuan pursed her lips, and a trace of shyness flashed in her eyes. "I won't tell you." Song Qingshu couldn't bear it anymore. With a low growl, he pressed on her as if he wanted to squeeze all the strength in his body into her body. The next morning, Song Qingshu was awakened by a knock on the door. He opened his eyes with difficulty and asked impatiently, "What's the matter?" "Young Master, Prime Minister Han has sent an invitation, asking young Master to come to the mansion for a chat." The maid outside the door answered, "Okay, I got it. You can leave first." Song Qingshu turned around and wanted to hug Chen Yuanyuan, but he found that she was already gone. Did she leave? Song Qingshu's shock was no small matter. He immediately climbed out of bed, but his whole body staggered and he almost fell to the ground. "Oh my God!" Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue. Chen Yuanyuan was the queen of sucking. Her charm was really too great. Last night, they fought fiercely for almost the entire night without a moment's rest. In fact, if it was any other man, he probably wouldn't be willing to rest for a night. However, even with Song Qingshu's strong physique, he still felt dizzy when he woke up this morning. If it was an ordinary man who married her, he would probably die of exhaustion in less than half a year. Last night, Chen Yuanyuan's purine qi was simply unimaginable. For a moment, he even had the illusion that she was still a virgin. Chun Yuan was able to turn all living things upside down and was able to mingle with so many men. Logically speaking, it was impossible for the pure yin energy in her body to be so thick. After thinking about it, Song Qing-shu could only attribute it to the fact that she had been wholeheartedly cultivating all these years and had never been touched by a man, coupled with the fact that her body had gathered the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. She was able to nourish such a thick, pure yin energy. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu used the joyous Diana to harmonize the yin and yang qi to nourish his body. Otherwise, after spending so much energy with Li Yuanji a few days ago, he probably wouldn't have been able to deal with that fox-like beauty last night. No wonder she is called a femme fatale. Any man who gets her will probably be reluctant to leave the bed and have no heart to do proper business. In addition, his body's vitality will gradually be consumed, and his luck will also decline. Before, Song Qing-shu didn't understand why Wu Sangui was willing to let Chun Yuan cultivate alone in a nunnery dozens of li away from Ping, Shuang Mansion. But now he gradually understood. Although Wu Sangui was despised by the world, he had great ambitions in his heart. His desire for power helped him resist the temptation of Chun Yuan. After all, he didn't have a divine skill to protect his body like Song Qing-shu. Being with Chun Yuan, his body would be hollowed out in minutes, and at the same time it made him lose the heart to do business. In the end, he decided to keep a distance from Chun Yuan. While he was in a trance, the door was pushed open with a squeak, and Chun Yuan came in carrying a bowl of soup. As soon as Song Qing-shu saw her, he couldn't help but stare. Her bright and clean face exuded a layer of crystal-clear light, as if there wasn't the slightest trace of last night's exhaustion. Moreover, at this moment, her body had a kind of holy feeling, simply like a white jade guanyin, completely without the slightest bit of flirtatious expression from last night. Song Qing-shu secretly smacked his lips. Chun Yuan was clearly born to absorb yang, to nourish yin. I was tired like a dog, but not only did she get up earlier than me, she was even glowing with health. You're awake? Seeing him staring blankly at her, Chun Yuan smiled gently. And Song Qing-shu's attention was placed on the plate she was holding. What is this? I made a bowl of soup for you. Rinse your mouth and see if it's to your liking. Chun Yuan first put the plate on the table, then poured him a glass of water. Seeing that she had washed herself clean and looked completely like a good wife at home, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. From now on, the long skirt will be a smile. I will wash my hands and make soup for you. Chun Yuan rebuked and rolled her eyes at him. Zhuo Wenjun's poem. It's a pity that her love was as deep as the sea. But in the end, she met the heartless Sima Xiangru. Are you hinting that I will also be like this? As a top courtesan, there were all kinds of scholars who interacted with her during the banquet, so she was naturally very familiar with this kind of illusion. Of course not. Song Qing-shu's smile froze. It wasn't easy for him to pretend to be cultured and show off, but he didn't expect to flatter the horse's leg. To avoid drawing trouble to himself, he hurriedly changed the topic. Sister Yuan woke up so early to make soup for me. Is it because you know that my body has been emptied, so you want to supplement me? Chun Yuan's face turned red. You can clearly be an elegant young master, but you have to pretend to be such a rascal. Song Qing-shu pulled her into his arms, feeling her warm and soft waist, and said with a smile, because a rascal is my nature. If I wasn't a rascal, how could I taste the taste of sister? Chun Yuan's face turned red when she heard this, and she lightly spat, then struggled out of his arms. Don't talk nonsense so early in the morning. Minister Han is still waiting for you. Hurry up and eat, then leave early. Many readers joined the group for the benefits, but the monk once again stated that in today's environment, there was no such thing as benefits. Chapter 1361. What's so good about seeing Han Zhuang? How can it compare to being with you, sister? Song Qing-shu said with a drooling face. Chun Yuan twisted her waist slightly and dodged Song Qing-shu's claw. Don't mess around. Get up. Song Qing-shu smiled and got up from the bed. Sister, Help me put on my clothes. Chen Yuanyuan glanced at his naked lower body. She couldn't help but recall the scene of him tormenting her last night. Her legs instantly turned to jelly. She hurriedly turned her head. If you keep doing this, I'll get out. Song Qingshu knew that although the two of them had the most intimate physical relationship, they hadn't been intimate enough. Seeing her expression change, he didn't dare to continue being presumptuous. Okay. I'll wear it myself. Men didn't have as many things to do as women in this regard. He quickly put on his clothes and washed up. He excitedly ran to the table and sat down. Let me try Sister Yuanyuan's cooking. Be careful, it's hot. Chen Yuanyuan hurriedly reminded him. But her pair of starry eyes stared at him nervously, for fear that he would say it was too bad. After taking a sip, Song Qingshu furrowed his brows slightly. Chen Yuanyuan's heart sank. Is it disgusting? In terms of craftsmanship alone, it's really not that good. Song Qingshu's words made Chen Yuanyuan's heart sink to the bottom of the valley. She continued, but it's full of your affection. It suddenly makes an ordinary bowl of soup sweet and delicious. It's the finishing touch. Chen Yuanyuan chuckled. You're obviously trying to make me happy. Song Qingshu said with an exaggerated expression, of course not. If people knew that you made it yourself and auctioned it publicly, I don't know how many men in the world would go crazy and how many princes would fight over it. The more I think of that scene, the more delicious it is. As soon as he finished speaking, he held the bowl and finished it. Aren't you afraid of the heat? Chen Yuanyuan couldn't help but feel happy even though she knew that he was trying to coax her. Seeing Chen Yuanyuan's bright and beautiful smile under the morning sun, Song Qingshu couldn't help but be tempted. Just as he was about to bully her again, a maid suddenly knocked on the door. Reporting to young master, there's a group of people outside, saying they want to see young master. Song Qingshu was displeased to be interrupted in the midst of his excitement. Did they reveal their identities? The leader said that his surname is Chun. This time, he brought the person young master asked him to find. The maid replied. So it's Chun Yuliang. Song Qingshu immediately understood. Previously, he knew that the servants and manservants in the residence were all spies from various forces, so he asked Chen Yuliang to help him select some new people with clean backgrounds and trustworthy backgrounds. Bring them here. After Song Qingshu gave the order, he turned around and held Chen Yuanyuan's soft and delicate hand. Big Sister Yuanyuan, I found some trustworthy people to serve you. When the time comes, you won't have to be as cautious as you are now, afraid that your identity will be exposed. Thank you, Chen Yuanyuan was touched. It should be known that she had covered her face when she went to the kitchen this morning, afraid that others would see her appearance. How do you plan to thank me? Song Qingshu reached out and pulled her into his arms as she cried out in surprise. Feeling her soft body, it was so comfortable that he almost whistled. It's half the day now, Chen Yuanyuan suddenly exclaimed. Song Qingshu immediately laughed. I just want to hug you. So what if it's in the middle of the day? Big Sister Yuanyuan, what are you thinking? Am I thinking of something wrong? Chen Yuanyuan's snow-white skin flushed red. She lowered her head to look at the big hand in her clothes. Where do you put your hand? Song Qingshu laughed mischievously. This is how I hug someone. Chen Yuanyuan was speechless. She wanted to say something, but Song Qingshu had already kissed her. She could only swallow the rest of her words. When Chen Yuliang came, he just happened to see Chen Yuanyuan hiding at the side with her hair in a mess. Even though her back was facing him, he could tell from the blush on her neck what kind of erotic scene had just happened. You're really lucky with women. Chen Yuliang looked at him with envy, jealousy, and hatred. However, he hid his emotions very well. Young master, I've already found the people you asked me to find yesterday. They are all people with clean backgrounds. Song Qingshu nodded with satisfaction. Good. In the future, the inner residence will be left to them to take care of. Also, leave some experts to guard the surroundings. Yes, young master. Chen Yuliang immediately ran down to assign tasks. Song Qingshu did not chase away the servant girls and manservants from before. He only sent them to the outer residence. After all, he had to leave some face for the various forces. There was no benefit in completely shedding all pretense of cordiality. As for the people that Chen Yuliang had brought with him, he did not need to think to know that they were his spies. However, dealing with him alone was much easier than dealing with the various forces. Moreover, Chen Yuliang was currently under his absolute control. I wonder how Jiruo and the others are doing in digesting Li Kaxiu's territory. It was not that Song Qingshu did not want to use his own people. It was just that his direct subordinates were currently digesting the results of the previous battle and could not spare any more manpower. I'm too lacking in manpower. Song Qingshu frowned. He knew that his forces had reached a bottleneck. After sending Chen Yuliang away, Song Qingshu originally wanted to be affectionate with Chen Yuanyuan again. However, he knew that Chen Yuanyuan would sternly refuse. Qingshu, I originally thought that you were different from other men. It seems that I'm a little disappointed. Song Qingshu gave a wry smile. You don't have to be so serious. Chen Yuanyuan's face was still frosty. Qingshu, I don't want you to waste your career because of me. I've been a femme fatale for most of my life. I don't want to be one for the rest of my life. Song Qingshu was silent. He knew that his infatuated appearance had evoked some of her past memories. He could not help but feel even more sorry for her. Don't worry, I'm not like those men. I know very well what I should do and what I shouldn't do. I was just joking with you just now. Chen Yuanyuan's expression softened. Qingshu, Han Xingzhou is, after all, a prime minister of the Southern Song dynasty. Don't offend him over some trivial matters. His prime minister status is of no use to me, Song Qingshu muttered. Noticing Chen Yuanyuan's reproachful eyes, he hurriedly said, All right, I'm afraid of you. I'll go over now, okay? Chen Yuanyuan finally smiled. Suddenly, her face turned slightly red. She whispered, I'll wait for you at home. Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows. Are you hinting something to me? Chen Yuanyuan smiled maturely and charmingly. What do you think? Song Qingshu's expression brightened. He quickly ran out, laughing as he ran. Then I'll go early and come back early. Chen Yuanyuan secretly spat, but her eyes were full of a gentle smile as she watched his disappearing figure. As the saying goes, the horse galloped with success. Song Qingshu soon arrived at the Han mansion. He found that in addition to Han Xingzhou, there were some unfamiliar faces in the mansion. It was not accurate to say that they were unfamiliar faces. In fact, he had met many of them once in the court, but there were so many ministers in the court that it would be strange if he could recognize them all. As if seeing Song Qingshu's awkwardness, Han Xingzhou pulled him into the crowd. Brother Song, let me introduce you. This is Minister Chen, who is in charge of the world's finances. He is on equal footing with the Prime Minister and the Privy Envoy. Song Qingshu instantly paid attention. After all, in addition to his important identity, this person was also the patriarch of the Chen family. In terms of seniority, he was Chen Yuanyuan's uncle. Although his hair was a little mottled and he was no longer young, he still had a handsome face. In particular, his meticulously trimmed beard gave his elegant temperament a hint of masculine charm. The Chen family's genes are really good. Song Qingshu looked at them in admiration. This is the political advisor Wu Qian. This is the commander of the bodyguard horse army Wu Gong. Han Xingzhou continued to introduce. As Song Qingshu exchanged greetings, he secretly clicked his tongue. This should be the core circle of Han Xingzhou's group. The Han family of Zhending, the Chun family of Haining, and the Wu family of Longan were all prominent wealthy families. When they joined forces, they were indeed a terrifying force. As for this one, I don't think I need to introduce him. Han Xingzhou pointed at Song Qingshu and smiled. Prince Song has been in the limelight recently. I'm afraid there is no one in the court who doesn't know you. As soon as Chun Ziqiang's voice fell, the group couldn't help but laugh. Not at all. Song Qingshu cupped his hands and pretended to be polite to these old foxes. The group chatted for a while, and Han Xingzhou invited everyone to take their seats. Song Qingshu had originally planned to find a random seat, but who knew that Han Xingzhou would insist that he sit at the head of the table. Of course, Song Qingshu refused. Although he was young and successful, he also knew that the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. The people here were all big shots with great power. In addition, there were many rules in the officialdom. He didn't want to offend them carelessly. The two sides were in a stalemate. Next to him, Wu Qian laughed. Prince Song, don't be modest. You will soon become the person with the highest status in our group. If you don't sit at the head of the table, who will? Song Qingshu was startled. Although in terms of actual power, he was stronger than these people, they were high officials of the Song dynasty. He couldn't control them. Why did they have such an attitude? As if noticing his confusion, Han Xingzhou chuckled and said, I invited young master here this time to celebrate in advance. Celebrate what? Song Qingshu became more and more confused. He began to wonder if Zhao Go had already agreed to the marriage of the two princesses. Tomorrow, the imperial edict will come. At that time, you'll be conferred the title of King Qi. Han Xingzhou patted his shoulder and smiled. King Qi. For a moment, Song Qingshu was both surprised and happy. After all, although he had always called himself the Golden Snake King, in the eyes of the mainstream, he was just a bandit king. Even many people in the Jianghu didn't take him seriously. If he was conferred the title of King Qi, he would be a legitimate prince. He would be completely different from the previous Golden Snake King. As for the fact that he was conferred the title of king by the Southern Song dynasty, there was some suspicion that he had been recruited. But Song Qingshu didn't care. Although the Southern Song dynasty was weak after the fall of the Ming dynasty, the Southern Song dynasty became the only legitimate dynasty in the eyes of the Han people. Obtaining the official recognition of the Southern Song dynasty was equivalent to obtaining the recognition of the Han people in the world. In ancient times, the most important thing was to have a legitimate title. Once one had a title, everything would be done with half the effort. On the contrary, one would be like Wu Sangui, no matter what they did. Chapter 1362. Just as Song Qingshu was feeling excited, Minister Chen Ziqiang smiled and said, Young master, you should be thanking Minister Han for this matter. Seeing Song Qingshu's confusion, Wu Qian explained, Originally, the emperor only intended to bestow the title of Prince of Langia. It was due to Minister Han's insistence that the emperor decided to raise the title. Song Qingshu's eyebrows twitched. From Prince of Langia to Prince of Qi, it was more than just an increase in rank. The title of a Prince of Langia was lower than that of a prince, and there were two types of princes. The first type was titled after the name of the county, which was commonly known as the Prince of Hailing, Prince of Lanling, Prince of Fufeng, and so on. The second type was titled after the name of the country, which was commonly known as the Prince of One Word. Among the Prince of One Word, the four titles were Jin, Qin, and Chu. Amongst them, Prince of Jin was the most exalted. This was because these four titles represented the most powerful states during the spring and autumn and warring states periods. Following them were Zhou, Lu, Zhaowei, Liang, Yin, Dan, Song, Wu, Yu, and so on. Due to the Song dynasty, the title of Prince of Song was specially reserved and not bestowed upon anyone. Although the Prince of Qi was only ranked third, this title was already extremely high. Moreover, Song Qingshu's power and territory were similar to that of the state of Qi. It was most fitting for him to be bestowed the title of Prince of Qi. In the beginning, Song Qingshu was extremely shocked that the Song court would be so generous. However, his thoughts quickly turned, and he quickly analyzed the reason. The Southern Song dynasty must have learned from the failures of the Ming dynasty and the Northern Song dynasty. It must be known that the Han regime had always been very strict when it came to bestowing the title of prince. Even if one had made great contributions, it was not guaranteed that one would be given the title of prince. However, those nomadic regimes obviously did not have so many rules. As long as it was beneficial to them, they would give out all kinds of titles as if they were free. The reason why the Manchu dynasty was able to conquer the Ming dynasty with only a few thousand 8 banners was because they used all kinds of generous conditions to entice the various Ming warlords to fight the Han. The Ming court's reaction was very slow. Often, they were still stingy about whether to reward the frontline commander of the first prince or second prince. The Song dynasty had suffered many similar losses. Back then, The warlords who surrendered to the enemy state and some rebel armies in the Central Plains were rewarded well by the Jin dynasty. Dynasty was far from the Mongol dynasty. Many times, Songo Shu's Jin's power and Jin's dynasty's Yang's Wen's dynasty. The power of the Golden Snake Battalion was very important. To Zhao Go, who was living a peaceful life, the Golden Snake Battalion could serve as the Southern Song dynasty's barrier in the north. Then he could enjoy peace. If the Golden Snake Battalion was roped in by the enemy state, he would not be able to eat or sleep well. Because he had learned from the mistakes of the past, he very generously bestowed the title of Prince of Qi. After all, the other party's army and power were ready-made. He only needed to provide an empty title. Even though he had figured out the trick, he still had to respond to Han Xingzhou's olive branch. Song Qingshu hurriedly thanked him. Han Xingzhou chuckled and stroked his goatee. Even though his words were polite, his eyes were filled with pride. During the banquet, a group of people were toasting each other. Han Xingzhou suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Prince Song, oh no, I should call you Prince of Qi now." Song Qingshu's face darkened. "Minister Han, you are too kind. With our friendship, there is no need for such a title. From now on, just call me Qingshu." Han Xingzhou was obviously very satisfied with Song Qingshu's understanding. "Haha, in that case, I won't stand on ceremony. But, Qingshu, you don't have to call me Minister Han in the future. Just call me by my courtesy name, Jiefu." In this world, only people who were very close to each other could call each other by their courtesy name. Han Xingzhou was obviously trying to get closer to each other. Naturally, Song Qingshu would not be stupid enough to refuse. He agreed with a slight excitement. "Does Qingshu know of our dynasty's Prince Xan and Prince Fu?" Han Xingzhou asked. Song Qingshu nodded. "There's no one who doesn't know of Prince Xan and Prince Fu's fame. They're our empire's western barrier. Back then, they defeated the Golden Crow technique in the west and stabilized the situation. They can be said to be the greatest contributors to the imperial court's ability to maintain half of the empire." The reason why Song Qingshu praised the two was that, firstly, he truly admired these two heroes. Secondly, there were members of the Wu family sitting at the banquet. It didn't cost him anything to say a few good words, and he could easily win the Wu family's favor. Why not? Sure enough, Wu Qian and Wu Gong revealed excited expressions. Han Xingzhou glanced at the two and smiled as he introduced them to Song Qingshu. Qingshu, they happen to be members of the Wu family. Yifu, Wu Qian, is the younger brother of Prince Xian and Prince Fu, while Wu Gong is Prince Fu's son. The long-gone Wu family is indeed full of talented people. Everyone in the family is loyal to their cause. "I'm impressed," Song Qingshu said with admiration. With Song Qingshu's current status, Wu Qian and Wu Gong immediately felt very honored and quickly returned the greeting. After chatting for a while, Song Qingshu suddenly asked curiously, "Oh right, why don't I see Prince Xian's son?" Wu Qian's and Wu Gong's countenances changed slightly. Han Xingzhou smiled bitterly and said, "Qingshu, you might not know this, but Prince Xian's lineage is inherited by his son, Wu Ting. He took on the role of the commander of the Dragon and Divine Guards, but he passed away at an early age, causing this lineage to decline. Thankfully, there is a successor. Some time ago, I was saved by Prince Xian's grandson, Wu Shi Wu Tianda. Like father, like son, not only is Wu Shi highly skilled in martial arts, but he is also a very chivalrous person." Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't the Wu Shi and Wu Tianda they were talking about Ling Hu Chong in disguise? It was one thing for Han Xingzhou to not know Wu Tianda in the past, but why did the Wu family not recognize that he was a fake? Despite the doubts in his heart, Song Qingshu still praised. Brother Wu is indeed righteous and a gentleman through and through. This was different from the many pleasantries he had exchanged earlier. He was praising Ling Hu Chong sincerely. After all, Ling Hu Chong was worthy of the title of a gentleman. Wu Gong suddenly sighed, emotionally. Back then, uncle and father guarded the land of Bashu, which was the imperial court's western barrier. It's a pity that our generation is unworthy. Most of us don't have much ability and can't inherit our father's legacy. Chen Ziqiang consoled him. Nephew, there's no need to belittle yourself. The elites of the imperial court are all in the imperial guards, and the elites of the imperial guards are all in the 3 offices. For you to be in charge of one of the 3 offices at such a young age, you've already done Prince Xian and Prince Fu a great honor. Although the Privy Council of the Song dynasty was the highest authority in the military, it only had the power to mobilize troops and had no right to train them. Normally, the military was controlled by the 3 offices: the front hall department, the horse commander of the Imperial Guards, and the infantry commander of the Imperial Guards. As the commander of the horse commander, Wu Gong could be said to be one of the 3 heavyweights in the military to a certain extent. My nephew Tianda, in terms of family background, experience, martial arts, and character, originally had a great chance to be the commander of the Sun Supporting Army and the Sky Martial Army. It's a pity that someone got in the way and rejected him at the last moment. Wu Gong said bitterly. In the Imperial Guards of the Song dynasty, the Sun Holding Army, the Sky Martial Army, the Dragon Guard, and the Divine Guard were called the 4 armies. The Sun Holding Army was the cavalry army, and the Sky Martial Army was the infantry army. The Dragon Guard was the horse commander of the Imperial Guards, and the Divine Guard was the infantry commander of the Imperial Guards. Each army was divided into the left and right divisions. Therefore, the officers of the Sun Holding Army and the Sky Martial Army were called the military governors of the 4 divisions. Song Qingshu's heart stirred, and he began to drink without batting an eyelid. These people were echoing each other, and it was obvious that they were deliberately saying it for him to hear. He did not know what their intentions were. Wu Qian comforted him. This is actually expected. The commander of the front hall department, Wang Ziding, has 2 sisters. One is married to Jia Sherdao, and the other is married to Xue Ji. Everyone knows which faction he belongs to. How could they let our people develop into the front hall department? Song Qingshu smiled bitterly in his heart. These people were talking about the hostility between them and Jia Sherdao's group in front of him. Obviously, they thought he was on the same boat as them. Now, he had to listen to them even if he didn't want to. Han Xingzhou said, "It's not a bad thing that Tianda couldn't be the commander of the Sun Holding Army and the Sky Martial Army. Now, he has a better chance." Jiafu is referring to Sichuan? Chen Ziqiang asked thoughtfully. Song Qingshu's heart moved. If he got rid of Machi Suo, the contract between Han Xingzhou and Mongolia would be effective again. Now that the messengers from both sides were communicating, it wouldn't be long before Sichuan returned to the Song dynasty. The western battlefront of the southern Song dynasty had retreated to Chongqing. If they could retake Sichuan, the pressure on the west would be reduced by several levels with the Sword Garret and Yangping as natural strongholds. After Sichuan returned, there would be a lot of vacancies, which became the focus of the competition between the various forces. Yes, Han Xingzhou laughed and said, Jia Sherdao is too greedy. The front hall department doesn't want us to intervene, and Sichuan wants to be under our control. How can there be such a good thing? Chun Ziqiang frowned and said, but according to the news I got, the emperor has decided to appoint Cheng Song, the Grand Secretary of the Hall of Assistants, as the Sichuan controlling commissioner. Cheng Song's sister, Cheng Miaojing, is the wife of Lu Wendi, the controlling commissioner of Jinghu, and Lu Wendi is a direct descendant of Jia Sherdao. I can imagine that Sichuan is also under his control. It was no wonder that Chen Ziqiang was so pessimistic. The controlling commissioner was a temporary position set up during the War of the Southern Song dynasty. The original intention was to be in charge of the war, but in practice, it was often in charge of civil affairs and taxes. It could be said that it was the highest official in a place. Han Xingzhou, however, was not in a hurry. He smiled mysteriously and said, Cheng Song has great ambition but little talent. He doesn't have the ability to really control Sichuan. I plan to nominate Tianda to be the commander of the imperial army stationed in the Qing state, as well as the governor of the Qing state and the pacification commissioner of the West Road of the Li state. With the Wu family's many years of business in Sichuan and Tianda's ability, it won't be difficult to make Cheng Song a mere figurehead and actually control Sichuan. Wu Gong smiled bitterly and said, "It's such an important position. Jia Shidao will definitely come for it. As far as I know, he has recruited Guo Jing and Huang Rong, who are under Lu Wendy's command, to the capital. I think he's going to recommend Guo Jing for this position." Wu Qian's face was also filled with worry. This is troublesome. This Guo Jing has a very high reputation in the hearts of the world. At the same time, he is highly skilled in martial arts and can lead troops in a battle. Tianda has no advantage over him at all. Chapter 1363. Song Qingshu finally understood why Han Xingzhou had invited him here this time. The group of people seemed to be having a heated discussion, but in fact they were all talking to him. They had done so much to get him to help. Becoming the focus of the group of people, Song Qingshu said with a wry smile, "I'm not a member of the imperial court, so I can't say anything about this." While Song Qingshu was a guest in the Han mansion, Guo Jing and Huang Rong also visited the Jia mansion. Jia Shidao even went out to greet them with great courtesy. Although they knew that Jia Shidao was just pretending to win them over, Guo Jing and Huang Rong still enjoyed Jia Shidao being one of the top figures in the imperial court. This time, in order to win them over, Jia Shidao held a family banquet and invited them to show their closeness. Therefore, he didn't invite outsiders, and all the guests were the more important figures in the Jia mansion. Jia Zhen, Jia Yin, Jia Rong, and other powerful figures in the Jia mansion almost all showed up. When they saw Huang Rong's beautiful face, the men in the Jia mansion were shocked. Jia Yin poked Jia Rong secretly and joked, "She seems to be more beautiful and charming than the one in your house." Although the two were one generation apart in seniority, they were similar in age and had similar interests. They were not so much uncle and niece, but more like bad friends. As for the one he mentioned, it was Jia Rong's wife, Qin Keqing, who was a famous beauty in the circle of the rich and powerful in Lin. That's not necessarily true. Jia Rong snorted, but her eyes were fixed on Huang Rong, and she couldn't move her eyes away. Jia Yin secretly despised her, thinking, "You pretend to be a loving couple, but secretly you are thinking about some dirty things." However, Huang Rong's beauty also made him feel a little itchy. He wanted to talk to her, but unfortunately, he couldn't find a topic to talk to. Suddenly, his heart lit up. He pulled Jia Rong to Huang Rong's side and said with a smile, "I've long heard of Chief Huang's great name. Now that I've seen you today, you are indeed a heroine. I really admire you." Jia Shidao had been talking to Guo Jing about something, so he couldn't be distracted. However, Huang Rong had clearly heard their conversation and felt the desire in their words. She was very unhappy, but she knew that Guo Jing was a very honorable person in the Jia clan. There was no need to ruin Brother Jing's career by falling out with him. Thus, she suppressed the displeasure in her heart and dealt with the two of them in a pleasant manner. When he heard her tone was gentle and polite. How could Jiao Yin be unable to sense the faint sense of alienation within it? He felt his heart itch even more, and he couldn't help but tease her. "Gang leader Huang, this nephew of mine seems to have some fate with you." Huang Rong's expression changed. She was a married woman, but he was frivolously talking about fate. It was obvious that he was up to no good. If she had met such a lecher on a normal day, she would have used the dog-beating stick method to make him fall on his face as a punishment. Unfortunately, she was in the Jia family now, so she hesitated and didn't do anything. Zhao Yin took the opportunity to continue. "My nephew's name is Rong, which happens to be the same as your wife. Don't you think it's fate?" Huang Rong smiled faintly. "My name is too common. There are at least 800 people in Xiangyang City. It's not fate at all." Seeing her smile, Zhao Yin and Jia Rong's minds were filled with the beauty of her pearly white teeth and red lips. They only felt dizzy. Jia Rong hurriedly said, "How is this not fate? After 10 years of cultivation, we crossed the same boat. After 100 years of cultivation, we slept together. Our names are the same. No matter what, it is no less than 10 years of fate." Seeing the two of them push their luck, Huang Rong knew that if she allowed them to continue talking, they would say more stupid things. So, she suddenly glared at them. Jiao Yin and Jia Rong only saw a blur in front of their eyes. That bright and charming woman had disappeared, and the person standing in front of them was like a fiendish yiksha. They were so frightened that they cried out in alarm and hurriedly took a few steps back. They pointed at her with a terrified expression and were speechless. Jia Sherdao couldn't help but stop and look over. Jia Zhun walked over, frowned, and stared at his son, Jia Rong. "What are you shouting for?" Although he was Jiao Yin's brother, he was about the same age as Jia Rong's father. So, when he scolded Jia Rong, Jiao Yin also trembled. The two of them were still in shock. They pointed at Huang Rong and couldn't say anything. She, Huang Rong smiled sweetly. "Just now, the two young masters asked me about the battlefield in Xiangyang. I accidentally described it too realistically and scared them. I'm really sorry." Jia Zhun was also dazzled by her smile. He couldn't help but think that she was even prettier than his daughter-in-law. Seeing that he was also staring at her, Huang Rong's face darkened. Jia Zhun was a lot older, after all, and he was much more shrewd than Jiao Yin and Jia Rong. Noticing the change in Huang Rong's expression, he immediately realized what was going on. He turned around and glared at his brother and son. "You two are a disgrace to the Jia family. You know, we're a martial family. How could you be so scared when you heard about the battlefield?" Jiao Yin and Jia Rong didn't dare to refute, but they were confused. Were they really scared by the battlefield? Why didn't they remember what just happened? Seeing the two of them being reprimanded, Huang Rong slightly pursed her lips and smiled. It turned out that she had just used the 9 manual's soul-shifting technique. How could these two hedonistic playboys withstand it? Naturally, they were being played around in circles. However, Huang Rong's complacency didn't last long. She felt weak in her body, and it took her a while to steady herself. Huang Rong lowered her head and touched her belly. She sighed with melancholy. Her physical strength and energy were greatly reduced after she was pregnant. She really didn't know if this decision was right or wrong. Not long after, everyone was seated. Jia Sherdao said to Guojing, "As I told you before, I've already made arrangements for the commanding officer in Sichuan. Now I'm going to let you take charge of the military in Sichuan." Hearing this news, Guojing looked refreshed. He wasn't happy about the promotion, but he cared about the people, and he was the successor of the Book of Wumu. Because he didn't have an official position in Xiangyang, he was often hindered by Lu Wendi, so he couldn't fulfill many of his ambitions. Now that the Mongols and the Southern Song dynasty had stopped fighting, the crisis in Xiangyang was temporarily resolved. If he took charge of the military in Sichuan, he was confident that he could train an elite army that would definitely shine in the future, whether the Mongols came back or reclaimed the Central Plains. However, before he had time to answer, Jia Sherdao continued, "But now there is a big problem, and that is, you have a competitor, Wu Shi." Wu Shi? Huang Rong's attention was also attracted by this matter, since it was related to her husband's future. Jia Sherdao explained, "Wu Shi is the grandson of Prince Xian Wulin. He used to be a general in Chuanzhou. At that time, everything about him seemed very mediocre, but he showed extraordinary talent on his way back to the capital. Not only was he skilled in martial arts, but he was also quite talented. He was recommended by Han Xingzhou to be the imperial armament in the palace. After all, he is the son of Prince Xian. I guess he was hiding his strength before," Jia Sherdao said to himself with some uncertainty. Huang Rong couldn't help but say, "Back then, Prince Xian and Prince Fu had been in Sichuan for many years, and Sichuan was full of officials of the Wu family. If we compete with the children of the Wu family, I'm afraid we won't have any advantage." Jia Sherdao was very satisfied with the word "we" that Huang Rong said. He had talked a lot with Guojing before, but Guojing kept talking about the common people and the common people, which made him feel that Guojing didn't seem to be loyal to him at all. That made him very unhappy. Now that Huang Rong had made her side clear, it was exactly what he wanted to see. "Don't worry about that, Master Huang," Jia Sherdao explained with a smile. "If it were 10 years ago, we wouldn't be able to compete with the descendants of the Wu family. But now that Prince Xian and Prince Fu are dead, and Sichuan has been conquered by the Mongols, the Wu family's power in Sichuan has been broken. Moreover, you and your wife have been guarding Xiangyang for many years, and your reputation has already spread all over the world. In terms of martial arts and reputation, no one is a match for Master Gua, so we still have a good chance of winning this time. In the Han residence, Han Xingzhou said something similar. In fact, we have already won this matter. We just need Qingshu's help for the last point. Song Qingshu was very surprised. After all, in terms of martial arts, reputation, and military experience, Ling Hucheng, who was disguised as Wu Tianda, was far from a match for Guijing. Why did Han Xingzhou think he had a good chance of winning? As if he had seen through his confusion, Han Xingzhou said with a smile, Qingshu is not an outsider, so I'll be frank with you. After hesitating for a while, as if he was thinking about how to phrase it, Han Xingzhou said, what does Qingshu think is the art of emperors? The art of balance, of course. Song Qingshu answered without thinking. At the same time, he was secretly shocked that a minister dared to talk about such a topic in private. Obviously, he wanted to get closer to Song Qingshu. However, his recklessness exposed the weakness of his character. As the saying went, if the emperor didn't keep secrets, he would lose his minister, and if the minister didn't keep secrets, he would lose his chastity. Han Xingzhou looked at him in surprise. After all, he had been in the officialdom for so many years, and the Han family had hundreds of years of inheritance, so he could understand this point. He didn't expect that a young man in Jianghu could see it so clearly. Seeing everyone's surprise, Song Qingshu laughed secretly. He hadn't watched so many palace dramas in his previous life for nothing. Besides, compared to Han Xingzhou's armchair strategist, he had been an emperor in the Forbidden City. Temporarily suppressing his shock, Han Xingzhou continued, there are three most important war zones in the dynasty: Jianghuai, Jinghu, and Sichuan. Now Lu Wendi, the commanding officer of Jinghu, is Jia Shidao's confidant. 60 to 70% of the officials in the Jinghu war zone are Jia Shidao's direct subordinates. Now that Jia Shidao has the position of commanding officer of Sichuan, if his people are in charge of the military power in Sichuan, won't he control 2/3 of the world? The emperor is a wise man, so he won't tolerate such a thing. Chen Ziqiang, the minister of planning, echoed, that's right. Therefore, although Guijing is the most suitable candidate to be the commander of all the armies in terms of martial arts, strategy, and reputation, the emperor still hasn't approved it. In the end, he decided to let Guijing compete with Tianda to decide who will be the commander. This shows the emperor's true attitude. Chapter 1364. Song Qingshu had to agree with Han Xingzhou's judgment. After all, if one put aside their standpoint, Guijing was more suitable than Ling Hucheng in all aspects. Since he didn't appoint Guijing directly, but went through all the trouble to arrange a martial arts competition, it was clear that Zhao Guo had other intentions. But even so, Guijing had already cultivated the 9-yin manual to perfection, and the 18 dragons subduing palms was also famous. Adding on the left and right inter fighting arts, he could be said to be one of the top masters in the world. Ling Hucheng's 9 swords beyond the swords was amazing, but he seemed to only be more familiar with the sword-breaking form. His attainments in the palm-breaking form and chi-breaking form were probably not enough to deal with Guijing. Fortunately, he had also practiced the I Ching scripture, which increased his chances of winning by 30%. But even so, in Song Qingshu's judgment, if he really fought with Guijing, Ling Hucheng would still be at a disadvantage, at most 40 to 60%. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. If it really is a martial arts competition, Ling, Wuxi probably won't have any advantage. Han Xingzhou nodded. That's right. Tianda's martial arts are high, but Guijing's reputation is out there. According to the analysis of our advisors, the chances of winning are not optimistic. I originally had some doubts about their conclusion, but now that Qingshu has said so, there is no doubt. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. These years, Song Qingshu's achievements were brilliant, and in the hearts of others, he was already a grandmaster. Naturally, Han Xingzhou wouldn't doubt his judgment. How does Jifu want me to help? Song Qing asked curiously. The other had done so much good, and it was time for him to return the favor. If it was a simple matter, he wouldn't mind helping out. Han Xingzhou didn't speak directly, but gave Wu Qian a look. Wu Qian understood and said with a smile, Guo Jing's martial arts are unparalleled, and there are probably few in the world who can beat him. Qing Shu, you are one of them. If Qing Shu can give him internal injuries before the battle, Tianda's chances of winning will greatly increase. Song Qing Shu frowned as he listened. Sure enough, there was no such thing as a good banquet. This is no small matter. I need to think about it carefully. He didn't refuse directly. After all, they had been smiling at him, so there was no need to embarrass them and make enemies out of nothing. Moreover, to some extent, he and Han Xingzhou had the same interests. If Jia Sherdao got what he wanted, it wouldn't be a good thing for him. Don't worry, don't worry. Seeing that he didn't refuse on the spot, Han Xingzhou and the others were overjoyed and didn't bring up the matter again. They just kept drinking wine to warm up the relationship between the two sides. As for the Jia family, after seeing off Guijing and Huang Rong, Jia Sherdao asked in the study, what do you think about the kung fu competition between Guijing and Wu Shi? A figure flashed out of the shadows. It was Liao Yingzhong, Jia Sherdao's most valued advisor. He said, Prime Minister, Guijing's 19 scripture has been practiced to the highest level, and it combines the hardness and softness of the 18 dragon subduing palms. I'm afraid even Hong Qigong can't compete with him. Although Wu Shi has shown amazing swordsmanship these days, I don't think he can compete with Guijing. Probably. Jia Sherdao frowned. He was obviously very dissatisfied with this statement. Liao Yingzhong hurriedly replied, according to my judgment, Guijing has at least a 70% chance of winning. 70% is not enough, Jia Sherdao said coldly. I need a 100% chance. Prime Minister, what do you mean? Liao Yingzhong asked curiously. Find a way to deal with Wu Shi in advance. Jia Sherdao's eyes flashed with coldness. Liao Yingzhong smiled bitterly and said, Wu Shi is a member of the Wu family, so I'm afraid it will be very difficult to buy him over. If we use force against him in advance, once Han Xingzhou has something on us, it will be bad. Jia Sherdao stroked his beard and said calmly, in life, what people pursue is nothing more than power, money, and women. Since power and money can't move him, we should start with women. I remember that when Wu Shi was the general of Chuanzhou, he seemed to be quite lustful. A leopard can't change its spots. It doesn't look like he's faking it. At this critical moment, I'm afraid ordinary women won't work. How about we ask Lady Rong? Liao Yingzhong asked carefully. It's not a big deal to sacrifice for the family at this critical moment. Jia Sherdao frowned and said, but in case our people alert Wu Shi, we should ask Lord Beijing to help us with this. Yes. Liao Yingzhong's heart skipped a beat. Lord Beijing was very good at this, so it was perfect to ask him to help. When Wu Shi was the general of Chuanzhou, his martial arts skills were very ordinary, but on his way back to the capital, his sword skills improved by leaps and bounds. I don't believe that he was hiding his skills before. Do you think it's possible that he obtained the Bixia sword manual by chance when he passed by Fuzhou? Jia Sherdao suddenly asked. Liao Yingzhong nodded and said, it's very likely. We sent so many people before, but none of them obtained the Bixia sword manual. Obviously, someone else got it before us. Wu Shi happened to pass by Fuzhou at that time. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? Jia Sherdao said expressionlessly. We'll ask Lady Rong to ask him about it. Yes. A beautiful and sad face appeared in Liao Yingzhong's mind, and he couldn't help but sigh. Since ancient times, beautiful women were often unlucky. The ancients were right. By the way, Liao Yingzhong was about to leave, but Jia Sherdao stopped him and said, have you found out where young master is? Liao Yingzhong suddenly had a cold sweat on his forehead and said, not yet. Young master seems to have disappeared from the world. Jia Sherdao looked gloomy and said, then continue to investigate. I don't believe that anyone can hide from us. Yes. Liao Yingzhong left the study and found that his clothes were soaked in cold sweat. While the Han family and the Jia family were discussing the martial arts competition between Guo Jing and Wu Shi, the attention of the palace was also on the two of them. Sir, I don't want Jia Sherdao to control the capital in Sichuan, so I arranged this martial arts competition. Isn't it too obvious? Zhao Go said to a shadow. He was wearing a black cloak, and he seemed to be shrouded in a thick layer of fog. Huang Chang's voice sounded. The emperor is the king. He doesn't need to consider the feelings of his subjects before making any decisions. He didn't address him respectfully at all, and called him emperor like an elder lecturing a junior. Zhao Go, who was always narrow-minded, didn't seem to be angry at all. That's true. Zhao Go smiled. He gently stroked the golden dragon throne, an intoxicated look on his face. Huang Chang was silent for a long time, then suddenly said, Actually, even if His Majesty didn't do this, I would have made a similar suggestion. Why? Zhao Go was instantly curious. Huang Chang never made suggestions to him, and now that he was speaking for the first time, it definitely wasn't because of the art of balance. Does His Majesty still remember the incident of Chun Xiaoi and Huang Chang wearing the yellow robe? Huang Chang asked. Yes. Zhao Go's expression didn't look good. Obtaining the throne had always been a knot in the hearts of the emperors of the Zhao and Song dynasties. Huang Chang didn't care about his feelings at all. He continued, Back then, Chai Rong had 4 princes. Chai Zongxuan abdicated and became King Zheng. Chai Shijin was adopted by Pan Mei and changed his name to Pan Lang. At the mention of Pan Lang, Huang Chang's eyes shone with a frightening light, as if he cared a lot about this name. After a long time, he continued, Chai Shihui was adopted by Lu Yin and changed his name to Lu Duoxuan. Zhao Go snorted coldly. These 2 traitors tried to rebel. Luckily, Emperor Taizong was wise, and the Song dynasty had the mandate of heaven, so they didn't succeed. The mandate of heaven? Huang Chang smiled non-committally. If it really was the mandate of heaven, then the Chai family wouldn't have been burned by the wildfire. Zhao Go frowned and said, After the king of Wei failed in his rebellion, Lu Duoxuan was exiled to Cliff Mountain. Pan Lang's whereabouts were unknown, and we haven't heard any news of him since. He most likely died in some wild mountain. How can it be considered as the wildfire not burning? Huang Chang looked at him deeply. Did His Majesty forget that Chai Rong had a son? Zhao Go was shocked. Sir, are you talking about the king of Chao, Chai Shirong? But he disappeared without a trace, as if he had evaporated from the world. That's right. The rumors outside say that he died in the chaos, but the records of the royal family clearly state that his body was not found, so he must have successfully escaped Kaifeng. Huang Chang raised his head and looked into the distance, as if immersed in his memories. All these years, I have been secretly investigating the whereabouts of this branch. At first, I had no leads, until the people of Liangshan rose up in rebellion. If it wasn't for the fact that the power of the country had been exhausted by suppressing these traitors, the great Song dynasty wouldn't have been so easily defeated by the female Zhenren, unable to fight back. Zhao Go slammed his hand hard on the dragon throne, clearly very angry. Huang Chang clearly didn't want to discuss the battle of Song and Jin with him. He continued, Back then, among the bandits of Liangshan, there was a leader called Sairinga Guosheng. By chance, I saw him fight. It was very similar to Chai Rong fighting on the battlefield. Zhao Go's pupils contracted. Guosheng? Huang Chang nodded and continued. After that, I investigated and found out that Guosheng was the descendant of Chai Shirong. Because Chai Shirong had escaped in a hurry, he didn't have time to take the martial arts in the palace, so he only knew some fighting skills on the battlefield, unlike the other 2 branches who knew the profound martial arts. If I remember correctly, Guosheng died in the battle against Fong La, right? Why do you suddenly mention him, sir? Zhao Go asked in confusion. That's right. Back then, the court sent me to encircle the leader of the Ming dynasty. Fong La Yangshan happened to be recruited at the time and participated in the encirclement. Guosheng died in that battle, and I also noticed his identity at that time, Huang Chang answered. As to why I mention it now, it's because I recently found out that Guo Jing is Guosheng's grandson. What? Zhao Go instantly exploded. Once he thought about how the descendant of the Chai family had unknowingly grown to such a high level of martial arts, he shuddered. But Guojing has been guarding Xiangyang loyally for the past few years. Could you be mistaken, sir? Huang Chang shook his head. Previously, I sent people to Guojing's hometown, Ox Village, to investigate. Now, the spies have reported that everyone in Ox Village knows that Guojing's father, Guo Xiaotian, is the descendant of Guosheng. After receiving confirmation, Zhao Go took a deep breath. But why would Chai Shirong let his descendant have his surname Wu? Chapter 1365. Hearing Huang Chang's words, Zhao Go's expression changed. He finally remembered some past events. During the founding of the Zhou dynasty, Guo Wei, several of his sons were killed by Lu Qingyu. As his adopted son, Chai Rong became his only choice to inherit the throne. Guo Wei saw Chai Rong as his own son, and Chai Rong saw Guo Wei as his father. Perhaps modern people might not understand, but in ancient times, after you adopted a family, you would no longer have any relationship with your previous family. What you inherited was the family's incense. Before the Chenqiye rebellion, Chai Rong was called Guo Rong on all official documents. Even he himself thought that his name was Guo Rong. But the heavens were jealous of the talented. Guo Rong died of illness in the prime of his life. Zhao Kuangyin took the throne from a widow and orphan. Knowing that he did not inherit the throne properly, to divert everyone's attention, he restored Guo Rong's surname to his before adoption. Guo Rong became Chai Rong. He did this to make the world think that Chai Rong was not the later Zhou emperor's biological son. If there was a problem with the legitimacy of the throne, then Zhao Kuangyin's yellow robe would not count as treason. Back then, there were people who secretly mocked Zhao Kuangyin for deceiving himself. But 100 years had passed, and reality proved how far-sighted he was. The world had already forgotten that Chai Rong was not Chai Rong of the Chai family, but Guo Rong of the later Zhou imperial Guo family. His intentions are damnable. His intentions are damnable. Zhao Go was furious. Even he had forgotten this, but Chai Shirong made his descendants remember that his surname was Guo and not Chai. It could be seen that he had never given up on the idea of restoring his country. Emperor, you do not have to worry too much. According to the intelligence we received, Guijing should not know his identity, Huang Chang said. Guosheng died in an accident, and then Guo Xiaotian died in an accident. When he died, Guijing was still in his mother's womb. Even if there was something in their bloodline that was passed down from generation to generation, it was broken when it came to Guijing. Speaking of this, Huang Chang laughed lightly, as if he found it very interesting. The descendant of the Chai family is actually helping the descendant of the Zhao family to protect the country. Interesting, very interesting. No, regardless of whether he knows of his birth or not, I cannot leave any hidden dangers. A threat of murderous intent flashed through Zhao Go's eyes. I heard that Guojing's martial arts are very high. Is there anyone in the imperial palace who can kill him? Huang Chang shook his head. The people in the palace with the imperial weapons, the commanders of the front guard, and the eunuchs you trust are all top-notch experts in Jianghu. But Guojing cultivates both inside and outside, and he grew up in blood and fire. Later, he experienced the tempering of war. No one in the palace is his match. Even you, Mr. Zhao Go was shocked. Of course, I have no problem with that. Huang Chang's tone was calm, but he exuded absolute confidence. But I will not help you kill him. Guojing is an upright person, and I admire him greatly. At the same time, he has also cultivated my Ninein manual. He can be considered half a disciple of mine. In addition, he does not know his past. I do not think there is a need to kill him. He doesn't know now, but there's no guarantee that he won't know in the future. Zhao Go was so excited his entire body was shaking. Clearly, he cared a lot about anything that threatened his throne. What's the difference between this and you killing Yu Fei that year? Huang Chang said mockingly. Even though everyone in the world thought that it was the treacherous officials Qin Hui and Ma Qichun who killed Yu Fei, there were no outsiders here. Both of them knew what had actually happened. Zhao Go's expression immediately turned ugly. Killing Yu Fei had always been a knot in his heart. He knew that doing this would leave him with infamy for thousands of years, but he had to do it. Some people guessed that he was worried that his throne would be threatened if he welcomed back Emperor Hui and Emperor Qin. Some guessed that it was because he wanted to negotiate with the Jin Kingdom and the pressure the Jin Kingdom exerted, but only Zhao Go knew that Zhao Kuangyin had usurped the throne as a military general. Thus, the wariness of military generals was engraved into the bones of every Zhao and Song emperors. In those years, Yu Fei's reputation was like the sun in the sky. If he was allowed to counterattack and restore the Central Plains, his prestige and the people's opinion would reach a terrifying height. It would be even higher than Zhao Kuangyin's prestige in the military. Zhao Go knew that Yu Fei was a loyal person, but what about his subordinates and friends? When the time came, those people would follow suit and wear the yellow robe. Even if Yu Fei was unwilling, there was nothing he could do. Another very important point was that Yu Fei was too young. Zhao Go's health had always been weak, and he had no children. If anything happened in the future, no one would be able to control him. Thus, Zhao Go used the Jin Kingdom's request and used Qin Hui and Ma Qifeng to get rid of this hidden danger in advance. For the sake of our ancestors' kingdom, any hidden danger must be killed in the bud, Zhao Go said sternly. Since he had killed Yu Fei back then, what was a mere Guojing now? It is for the sake of your kingdom. Guojing must not be touched. Huang Chong snorted coldly. Why? Zhao Go asked curiously. Huang Chong replied calmly. The Guojing and his wife's righteous deeds of guarding Xiangyang all these years have already spread throughout the world. They are heroes in everyone's hearts. Yu Fei's unjust murder had already caused the people of the world to reach a tipping point. If something similar happens again, the new hatred and old hatred will pile on top of each other. I am afraid that the foundation of the country will be shaken. Hearing him say this, Zhao Go instantly calmed down. He did not care about anything else, but when it came to the matter of his throne, he was extremely cautious. But we cannot kill him. Are we supposed to just watch him take over the military in Sichuan? Thinking of letting Chai Rong's descendant take over the military, Zhao Go shuddered. Master also said just now that with Guo Jing's martial arts, Wuxi is no match for him. Wuxi is not completely powerless. His sword techniques have already touched the threshold of rules. Thinking of that kid's miraculous sword techniques, Huang Chong could not help but be a little dazed. With his eyesight, how could he not see that it was the solitary 9 swords? Back then, Dugu's Seeker of Defeat swept through the martial arts world while he was in seclusion studying martial arts. By the time he had mastered his martial arts, Dugu's Seeker of Defeat had disappeared. The two of them never had a chance to fight. It was truly regrettable. Although he has the power to fight, he will not be able to escape the fate of defeat. Naturally, Zhao Go was not satisfied with this answer. Why don't Master make a move and heavily injure Guojing beforehand? That way, Wuxi will be able to win. Huang Chong glanced at Zhao Go indifferently, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. A grandmaster has the strength of a grandmaster. Emperor, do not bring this matter up again. With that, his entire person gradually disappeared into the clouds. Zhao Go's breath stopped, and he could not speak in embarrassment. Just as he did not know what to do, Huang Chang's voice suddenly came from the air. Emperor, why are you only focusing on Guojing? Zhao Go was startled at first, but he was a smart person and immediately reacted. That's right. Although the masters under him could not do anything to Guojing, they would have no problem dealing with Huang Rong. Thank you for your guidance, Master. Zhao Go did not know whether Huang Chong had left or not. He bowed to the air, but his mind was racing. He had always been good at scheming, and very quickly, he constructed a plan that he was 90% sure would work. After Song Qing-shu left the Han Manor, he went straight back to his own manor. Under Chun Yuan-Yuan's shocked gaze, he carried her back into the house. At first, Chun Yuan-Yuan was a little reluctant, but she quickly lost to Song Qing-shu's dragon's claw. Her breathing quickened, and her entire body weakened. Following a high-pitched moan, the room finally returned to peace. Chun Yuan-Yuan's face was flushed as she pushed away the man on top of her. She looked at him with some resentment. I feel like you seem to have treated me as a tool to satisfy your lust. You don't like it? Playing with the part that would make all men in the world envious. Song Qingshu said with a faint smile. Don't say anything that goes against your heart. Your body's reaction just now has already sold you out. Chen Yuan's face reddened. My body does like it, but my heart does not like this kind of feeling. Have you encountered something troubling you? Song Qingshu could not help but sigh that the other was a woman who understood men very well. Yes, there is indeed something troubling me. Can you tell me about it? Chen Yuan picked up his hand and wrapped it around the back of her head. Her entire body shrunk into the crook of his arm. Even though she was older than the other, she really liked this cute and helpless position. Song Qingshu hesitated and did not tell her the details of Han Qingzhou's request. He only summarized, right now, there's one thing that is not difficult for me, and after I complete it, I will be able to obtain something that I have always dreamed of. At this point, he could not help but think of Huang Rong's beautiful face. After a long silence, he continued to ask, do you think I should do it? Of course not. Even though Chen Yuan's voice was very gentle, it was filled with determination. Why do you say that? Song Qingshu looked at her curiously. I haven't even told you my concerns. Chen Yuan shook her head and said with a gentle smile, it's such an easy thing to do, and you can even obtain the thing you yearn for even in your dreams, but you're still hesitating. It's obvious that you'll give up something very important if you do this. Although I don't know what it is, I instinctively feel that once you take action, you won't be able to turn back. Song Qingshu's eyes lit up, and he could not help but exclaim, everyone says that you are a femme fatale, but in my view, you are clearly someone like Guanyin Zhongsun or Ma Xiaoying. In this world, only you, Qingshu, do not think of me as a femme fatale. A trace of sorrow flashed across Chen Yuan's beautiful face. Clearly, she was thinking of the hardships of the first half of her life. But she quickly thought of something and could not help but smile. Comparing me to Empress Zhongsun or Empress Ma, it seems that Qingshu, your heart is not small. Song Qingshu grinned and squeezed. If comparing breasts, how can I compare to Jejia? Chen Yuan's jade face blushed and she pouted. Annoying, I do not have such a glib-tongued deity. This pouting could numb a man's bones. Song Qingshu could not hold it back and leapt at her again. Ninja, tomorrow, those people from the court will come to visit the Fu. Ah, why? The court will immediately make me Qi Wang. They will come to congratulate me, Song Qingshu said proudly. How does it feel to be a Wang Ye's woman? Chen Yuan looked at him bitterly. Did you forget that I was originally a Wang Fei? Chapter 1366. Feeling the drastic changes in the man's body, Chen Yuan rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. You. Before she could finish, the rest of the word were knocked back by Song Qingshu. Chen Yuan was also aroused by him. Her whole body was soft and tender. Her arms gently hugged the man on top of her, and a pair of watery and charming eyes looked at her gently and charmingly. This kind of soft and watery eyes was like the strongest drug to a man. Song Qingshu roared and pounced on her. Qingshu, just now, it's not good for your body to be like this. It's okay, my body is very strong. That's because you're young now. When you're older, you'll regret it. Don't worry, the martial arts I practice can harmonize the yin and yang qi to nourish my body. Even if I'm old, I can still make Big Sister beg for mercy. Annoying, the next morning, Chen Yuan woke up early. Thinking of the absurdity of last night, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. I'm really going to die. Why did I accompany him to play around like this? Looking at the handsome face of the man beside her, Chen Yuan couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Her life was full of ups and downs, and she had met many men. Originally, she thought that her heart was like still water, and she would never be moved by any man again. However, meeting Song Qingshu gave her a feeling that she had never felt before. She knew very well that it wasn't love. Whether it was age or experience, the difference between the two of them was too big. However, Song Qingshu had a feeling that made her heart beat endlessly, especially in bed. He was really a perfect lover. Perhaps all the men in the past added together couldn't compare to him. I'm really going to die. I was actually conquered by his skills in bed. Chun Yuan covered her head with a pillow, her pretty face blushing incomparably. What are you talking about? Song Qing-shu was awakened by her movement and couldn't help but ask with a smile. Chen Yuan's jade face blushed. Nothing. Looking at her messy hair, a head of black hair hanging in front of her chest, a large area of snow-white skin faintly discernible. The contrast between the two colors had a strong visual impact. Sister Yuan, you're so beautiful, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but exclaim. Chen Yuan had heard too many praises for her beauty, and most of them were much more elegant than this sentence. But to her, they were far less touching than this sentence. Little brother, you are also very handsome. Song Qing-shu was speechless. Don't use such ambiguous terms, okay? Besides, it's not like you haven't experienced it yourself. How am I small? Chun Yuan spat. Little rascal. Song Qing-shu could not help but sigh that this was the charm of a mature woman. Right now, Chun Yuan was probably at her most beautiful, but with the passage of time, her beauty would gradually fade. Therefore, he was determined to let Chun Yuan practice the everlasting youth art. Just as he was about to spend some time with her, a maid suddenly came to report, "Young master, a man and a woman have come to visit." Song Qing-shu was extremely displeased that his mood was interrupted. Is it a name card? These maids found by Chun Yuliang were not as sensible as the previous ones. Shouldn't they report the identity of the visitors at the beginning? No, the maid replied, but they said they are from the Huashan sect. One surnamed Yu, the other surnamed Lin. Yuling Shan and Lin Pingji? Song Qing-shu sat up from the bed and quickly realized their identity. At the same time, he was curious about why they came to Lin and quickly asked them to wait in the hall. Serve them tea first. I'll come out right away. Song Qing-shu ordered the maid and leaned over to kiss Chun Yuan's cheek. Sister Yuan, you should have good rest. After all, last night was tossed and turned all night. You should sleep when it's almost dawn. Chun Yuan was so shy that she directly threw the pillow to Song Qing-shu. Watching him leave with a laugh, she couldn't help touching her hot face. Since she met this bastard, the number of times she blushed seemed to be more than the number of times in the first half of her life combined. After Song Qing-shu came to the hall, he saw Yuling Shan and Lin Pingji whispering something. Seeing him come, they hurriedly stood up and shouted affectionately, "Brother Song." For Lin Pingji, Song Qing-shu had taught him skills. For Yuling Shan, Song Qing-shu had saved her family's life, so they were extremely respectful to him in their tone. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but praise. I haven't seen you for a long time. You two are still such a perfect couple. Lin Pingji had delicate features and was a delicate and beautiful young man. It seemed that he was a woman disguised as a man. Yuling Shan had a graceful figure and a pretty face. When they stood together, there was indeed a feeling that they were a match made in heaven. After the two sides chatted for a while, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but ask, "You are far away on Mount Hua. Why did you come all the way to Linen?" Lin Pingji wanted to say something, but stopped. Yuling Shan helped him to say, "Brother Song, little Linzi has always wanted to avenge the destruction of Fuwei Escort Agency. Originally, he was quite confident in his martial arts. But some time ago, he was repeatedly defeated, which made him realize that his foundation was too shallow. If he wanted to avenge with martial arts, I'm afraid it would be unrealistic in a short time." Song Qing-shu frowned and said, "Pingji, I taught you the Five Mountains magical sword. In terms of sword art, you are no less than Yu Songhai. Now the only thing you lack is experience and skill. Of course, because your inner force is not enough, I'm afraid it will take another 7 or 8 years to win." Lin Pingji smiled bitterly and said, "But 7 or 8 years is too long. I can't wait to kill my enemy with my own hands." "Is 7 or 8 years a long time?" Song Qing-shu said seriously. "You should know that the Qing-chung school has been passed down for thousands of years. Yu Songhai is the most outstanding talent in the Qing-ching school in the past 100 years. He's been practicing hard for decades, but you can catch up with him in only 7 or 8 years. Isn't that enough? Lin Pingji looked ashamed and said, "In fact, I also know this. But the revenge of my parents is absolutely irreconcilable. Every day when I am free, the tragic situation of Fuwei Escort Agency will appear in front of me. I know that if I go on like this, I will probably be possessed by the devil. So I can't wait any longer." "Then what are you going to do?" Song Qingshu knew what he said was the truth. If he couldn't calm down, even if he practiced for another 7 or 8 years, he might regress more and more. Lin Pingji answered, "Recently, I heard that the Mongols have returned Sichuan to the Song dynasty. There are many vacancies in Sichuan. Coincidentally, my ancestor has a cousin's descendant who is an official in the imperial court. I want to get an official position through him and take the opportunity to seek revenge on Yu Songhai in Sichuan." Although Yu Songhai did not say it clearly, Song Qingshu could guess a thing or two. After all, Yu Songhai was the leader of a sect and had many disciples under his command. It was too difficult for Lin Pingji to take revenge alone without an absolute advantage in martial arts. Therefore, Song Qingshu planned to use the power of the officials to help him take revenge. After all, Mount Qingsheng was located in Sichuan. "What's the name of your relative? What position does he hold now?" Song Qingshu asked. Nowadays, all the empty positions in Sichuan were being fought for by various forces. If Lin Pingji's relative didn't have enough power, he might not be able to intervene even if he wanted to. "His name is Lin Rahai. He is now the Salt and Iron Envoy of the Imperial Court." Lin Pingji replied. "Lin Rahai?" Song Qingshu was surprised. He knew this man. He was one of the 3 envoys under Chen Ziqiang. Although his official position wasn't as high as Zaifu's, he was still famous for his power. The reason why Song Qingshu knew so much was that Lin Rahai's wife was Jia Min, Jia Shidao's sister. They had a daughter named Lin Daiyu. Therefore, although he was Chen Ziqiang's subordinate, he wasn't one of Han Zaizhou's men. Instead, he was one of the core members of Jia Shidao's group. Thinking of this, Song Qingshu couldn't help but ask, "Since Lin Rahai is your uncle according to seniority, why did you come to my place? Is he unwilling to help?" Lin Pingji blushed and said, "Not really. We visited his house several times before, but every day his house was crowded with people. We couldn't even get in." Seeing his embarrassment, Song Qingshu couldn't help but comfort him with a smile. "Don't think too much. Lin Rahai didn't mean to hurt you. He is in charge of the salt and iron industry in the world. It's a big job. Not to mention you, even the appeasers and transport envoys are often rejected there. It's normal for them to wait for hours." Song Qingshu couldn't help but think of the officials of the State-Owned Assets Supervision and Administration Commission in his previous life. Although their ranks weren't high, they had great power. Even governors and mayors had to wait in line when they went to his place. Yulingshan said crisply, "We know it's useless to keep waiting, so we want to ask Brother Song to introduce us." These days, Song Qingshu's affairs were everywhere in Lin City. Yulingshan knew that all the people he visited were at the level of prime minister, so she dragged Lin Pingji to find him. Lin Pingji was embarrassed to ask for help, but he couldn't resist Yulingshan's coaxing and pestering, so he had to bite the bullet and come. "You came at the right time. If nothing unexpected happens, many officials of the imperial court will come to my house today. I'll introduce you then," Song Qingshu said with a smile. Lin Pingji's face was full of excitement. He clenched his fists tightly, and his face was flushed as if he had put on rouge. Thank you, Brother Song. This is too much trouble. I really don't know how to repay your kindness. Little Lin, don't worry about it. It's just a piece of cake for me." Looking at his face, which was even more charming than many women, Song Qingshu felt a chill run down his spine. A man who looked more like a woman than a woman. If it was in his era, there would be many people who would want to F***CK him. "Brother Song, why are there so many officials coming to your place today?" Yulingshan asked curiously. Before Song Qingshu had time to answer, a high-pitched voice suddenly came from not far away. "Song Qingshu receives the imperial edict soon." A group of imperial bodyguards surrounded a eunuch came to them and said, In accordance with the will of heaven, the emperor decrees. Song Qing-shu is conferred the title of Prince of Qi. Chapter 1367. Usually, when receiving an imperial edict, one had to kneel and kowtow. But during the entire process, Song Qing-shu stood there like a spear. He had no intention of kneeling. The eunuch reading the edict acted as if he didn't see it. He didn't mention it at all. After reading the edict, he even ran over to Song Qing-shu with a fawning smile. After all the eunuchs in the palace were well informed. Back then, Song Qing-shu didn't even kowtow to Zhao Go in court. All the officials and generals in court couldn't do anything about it. How could a little eunuch like him not know what to do? Of course, he could go back and complain. After all, according to the rules, if someone was disrespectful when receiving an imperial edict, he had the duty to report it. But he had been in the palace for so long and wasn't stupid. Even if Zhao Go knew, he couldn't do anything about it. Wouldn't he be disliked if he caused trouble for him? The emperor couldn't punish Song Qing-shu. What if the emperor couldn't hold back his anger and took it out on him? While Lin Pingji and Song Qing-shu were getting closer, Yu Lingshan's mind was still replaying the scene of Song Qing-shu turning around and smiling. For a moment, she felt a little dizzy. When she saw how he was neither servile nor overbearing, and even a little arrogant, she couldn't help but feel moved. She couldn't help but secretly poke Lin Pingji. "Little Lin, did you see that? When can you be as arrogant as Big Brother Song?" Lin Pingji's face was full of awkwardness. He smiled and said, "Brother Song is a genius. How can I compare to him?" Yu Lingshan pouted. "Puffed, you have no ambition." Lin Pingji opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. Looking at Song Qing-shu standing there like the sun, he couldn't help but feel envious and inferior. Actually, Yu Lingshan didn't have any bad intentions when she said this. Which girl didn't want their sweetheart to be a hero? But reality was cruel. In the end, not many people could become heroes. But many girls would subconsciously compare their sweetheart to other men. On one hand, it would make them disappointed. On the other hand, it would make their sweetheart depressed. Fortunately, Lin Pingji had always admired Song Qing-shu. Otherwise, the young couple might have had a big fight because of this. After seeing off the eunuch, Song Qing-shu said to Lin Pingji and Yu Lingshan, "You can stay here and have a good rest. I'll introduce Lin Rahai to you in the evening. I'm going to arrange the banquet, so I won't entertain you. Please help yourselves." Yu Lingshan's eyes lit up, and she said with a smile, "Brother Song, you've helped us so much, and we don't know how to repay you. Why don't we help you as well? I used to organize a gathering for all the disciples of the Huashan sect." Song Qing-shu wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, he nodded and agreed. "Then I'll have to trouble you." Naturally, he could only smile at her experience in organizing a gathering for the Huashan sect. This kind of banquet for the officials of the court was not something she could handle. However, it was not a bad idea to have the two of them supervise from the side. After all, the entire residence did not have many trusted aides. On the contrary, Yu Lingshan and Lin Pingji's loyalty was more reliable. Song Qing-shu then gathered all the servants in the residence. He picked out a few experienced nannies and stewards from the people that Han Xingzhou had sent over and had them handle this matter. Later on, the people that Chun Yuliang had sent over would be their assistants. Lin Pingji and Yu Lingshan would stand to the side and act as supervisors, reporting back to Song Qing-shu at any time. After making all the arrangements, Song Qing-shu returned to the inner residence. Chen Yuan had long since finished dressing up and was waiting for him. Unable to restrain her curiosity, she looked outside. "I heard that the residence seems to be very lively. What happened? Didn't I tell you last night that I was conferred the title of Prince of Qi? Just now, the imperial edict arrived. Later, many officials of the court will come to congratulate me. Right now, the residence is preparing for the relevant matters," Song Qing-shu explained. Chen Yuan's face reddened. "Last night, you said that in that kind of situation. How could I possibly remember?" Suddenly, she realized something. Somewhat worried, she said, "Just now, you said that many high-ranking officials of the court will come. Among them, there will definitely be people who recognize me. If by any chance I am recognized, you will be in big trouble. Although Chun Yuan had lived in seclusion for the past few years, she had been so famous for her beauty that it was hard to say that no one had seen her. Moreover, among the people who would come tonight, Han Xingzhou, Chen Ziqiang, and the others would definitely recognize her. One was the person who had arranged for the mother and daughter pair to enter the palace, and the other was a senior member of the Qin clan. There is no need to worry. I will help you put on some makeup and change your appearance. When the time comes, you just have to stay in the inner residence and not go out. There should be no problem, Song Qingshu said with a relaxed smile. Disguise? Chen Yuanyuan looked at him in shock. Watch me. Song Qingshu led her to the dressing table and took out the materials that he had prepared. After fiddling with them for around an hour, he said, How about opening your eyes and looking? How'd you do it? Looking at the woman in the mirror, Chen Yuanyuan exclaimed. If she had known in advance, she could still vaguely recognize her own reflection. But if she had not known in advance, it would have been impossible to connect the person in the mirror with her. Your man is very capable, Song Qingshu said proudly. Bah, who treats you as a man? Chen Yuanyuan laughed. Suddenly, she nervously wanted to touch her cheeks. Her hand reached out halfway and stopped, as if she did not dare to touch it. Can I smile? Song Qingshu squeezed her shoulders and turned to himself. Your smile is so beautiful. Why can't you smile? Seeing that he did not understand her worry, Chen Yuanyuan could not help but roll her eyes. I am worried that smiling will ruin your disguise. Don't worry. My disguise is not so easy to ruin. Song Qingshu laughed. The two of them cuddled for a while. Because there were many things outside, Song Qingshu had to go out and help. Unknowingly, night gradually fell. The officials of the imperial court also began to arrive one after another. Many of the minor officials had arrived rather early, and Song Qingshu could not remember their names. In any case, they exchanged some useless pleasantries and were handed over to the housekeeper to receive them. After a while, more and more important people began to appear. The first important officials to arrive were Han Xingzhou and his entourage. After all, the two sides were in the honeymoon period. In order to increase their favorability, it could be said that Han Xingzhou paid attention to every detail. Chen Ziqiang, Wu Qian, and others came with Han Xingzhou. They had basically met in the Han residence last time. Everyone could be considered acquaintances, so there was not much ceremony. What was surprising was that Ling Hu Chong actually came with them. Song Qingshu said with a smile, I did not expect that, Ling. Brother Tianda would also come to give me face. It is really an honor. Ling Hu Chong's face was sour. He snorted in a low voice. Do you think I wanted to come? If it were not for Minister Han, I would not have bothered to see you. Song Qingshu was not angry. In fact, you should be glad that you came today. Is that so? Ling Hu Chong smiled coldly. Song Qingshu put his arm around his shoulder. Because today there is someone here that you have been thinking about day and night. Ling Hu Chong's heart jumped. He followed his gaze and saw Yu Lingshan standing not far away. His whole body suddenly stiffened, and his breathing quickened. Noticing his reaction, Song Qingshu secretly shook his head. Although Ling Hu Chong had always claimed that the one he liked now was Ren Yingying, he could deceive others, but he could not deceive himself. Seeing the two of them, the most instinctive physical reactions had already explained everything. Song Qingshu understood Ling Hu Chong very well. Everyone had such a person in their life. Reason made you try to forget her, but she was the most special existence. Brother Song, a loud and clear voice called out. Song Qingshu turned his head and saw Gui Jing walking over, all smiles. Congratulations, congratulations. Brother Song Qingshu hastily returned the greeting, but his gaze involuntarily shifted to the side. Fortunately, he was not disappointed. A beautiful and charming young woman followed at his side. Who else could it be but Huang Rong? As Song Qingshu was sizing up Huang Rong was also sizing him up. She sighed inwardly. When she had first met him in Jingzhou, he had still been an ordinary person. She had not expected that in 2 years his name would not only shake the world, but that he would also become King Qi. However, she had not expected that such a thing would happen between them. When the two of them looked at each other, the air seemed to exude an indescribable atmosphere. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu was sufficiently rational. He promptly withdrew his gaze and changed the topic. You two came at just the right time. Come, let me introduce you. As he spoke, he pulled over the dazed Ling Hu Chong. This is the current imperial weaponsmith of the Imperial Palace, Wu Shi and Wu Tianda. These two are the world-renowned husband and wife, Guijing and Huang Rong. Upon hearing the other party's name, both Ling Hu Chong, Guijing, and Huang Rong's eyes narrowed. After all, both sides already knew about the martial competition and knew that the other party would be a great enemy. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. As the two sides exchanged greetings, Huang Rong's eyes swiveled. Pursing her lips, she asked with a smile, General Wu, some time ago, I also heard that General displayed your invincible might in Fujian, defeating the experts of the Song Mountain sect. Afterwards, you even saved Lord Han. What was the name of General's sword technique? Ling Hu Chong had an apologetic expression on his face. I hope that Madam will forgive me. I did not intentionally hide this from you. It is just that I promised the senior who taught me this sword technique that I could not tell anyone else about its origins. There are indeed many seniors and experts in the martial arts world who have such a rule. Huang Rong smiled to show that she understood, but she secretly clenched her teeth. This little fox looks honest on the surface, but he is actually very cunning. I must find a chance to remind Brother Jing so that he won't be taken advantage of later. Song Qing-shu watched from the side and secretly laughed. As expected, Huang Rong never let go of any opportunity to inquire about information for Guijing. It was a pity that she had misunderstood Ling Hu Chong. Ling Hu Chong did not intentionally hide it. He had promised Feng Xingyang that he would not tell anyone about the sword technique. Ling Hu Chong's mind was completely focused on Yu Lingshan, who was not far away. After chatting with the couple for a while, he said goodbye and ran to Yu Lingshan. He had even wanted to ignore his disguised identity and talk to his little junior sister, who he had been thinking about day and night. Unexpectedly, Lin Pingji suddenly appeared next to her. Yu Lingshan immediately smiled sweetly and took out a handkerchief to wipe his sweat. Seeing this, Ling Hu Chong felt as if he had received a critical hit of 9,999 points. He was completely dazed. Song Qing-shu secretly shook his head. As he was sighing, Jia Sherdao also walked in with a group of people. He vaguely remembered the person who came with him. He had seen him in the court before. It was Xueji, the governor of political affairs. Chapter 1368. Noticing Song Qing-shu's gaze, the girl blushed and lowered her head. Xueji smiled and said, This is my daughter, Bao Chai. She is here to greet King Qi. The girl bowed gracefully and said, Greetings, King Qi. Nice to meet you, Miss Xue. As expected of Xue Bao Chai, she was the epitome of a lady from a wealthy family. Her etiquette was flawless. Song Qing-shu was still in a daze. He never expected that one of the two female leads of Dream of the Red Chamber would be standing right in front of him. However, when he thought of the ladies from the Jia Mansion, including Shi Shangyun, it wasn't surprising to see Xue Baochai here. In contrast, Song Qing-shu was more curious about why Xueji had brought his daughter here tonight. Could it be that she wanted to use a honey trap on him to win him over? Song Qing-shu quickly denied this speculation. After all, he was not that narcissistic. Moreover, he was clearly the emperor's son-in-law now. How could Xueji be so insensible as to let his daughter and the princess fight over a man? Seeing that Jia Sherdao and Xueji were chatting happily and looking in Xue Baochai's direction from time to time, Song Qing-shu suddenly realized that they weren't trying to win him over. They were taking this opportunity to let Jia Sherdao see his daughter-in-law. Xueji was a core figure in Jia Sherdao's group. Their children were of the same age, so they wanted to marry each other. However, it was a big deal, and they could easily become enemies. Therefore, neither of them dared to bring it up directly. At the same time, it wasn't convenient for them to take their daughter to the Jia Mansion to cover it up. Song Qingshu happened to be King Qi, which provided an excellent place for them to meet. The reason why Song Qingshu could see through all this was that he had Red Dream of the Red Chamber in his previous life. He knew the relationship between Xue Baochai and Jia Baoyu. For people in this world, there weren't many people in Lin, and who could guess what Xue Ji was thinking? After all, both Jia Baoyu and Xue Baochai were still young. Xue Baochai is here. I wonder what Lin Daiyu looks like. Song Qingshu laughed self-deprecatingly, but soon his eyes widened and he muttered to himself, "Speak of the devil, and he will appear." It turned out that an elegant middle-aged official was leading a timid young girl over. The steward next to him quietly reminded him that this middle-aged official was the salt and iron envoy, Lin Rahai. Although his position dealt with money all day long, he didn't have the slightest bit of the stench of money. Instead, he was more like a distinguished and elegant middle-aged scholar. Song Qingshu noticed that there was a hint of obscurity between his brows. He couldn't help but frown inwardly. His body's origin was already damaged. It seemed like he didn't have the appearance of longevity. Congratulations on being conferred the title of King of Qi. Lin Rahai cupped his hands and smiled from afar. Song Qingshu hurried over to greet him. "Thank you, Lord Lin." Lin Rahai was startled. He didn't expect that the other party would personally come out to greet him. Although his official position wasn't small and his real power was great, he still couldn't compare to those prime ministers. Song Qingshu was currently in the limelight and had become the esteemed king of Qi. The difference in status between the two was already very large. Somewhat overwhelmed by the unexpected favor, Lin Rahai hastily pulled his daughter over. "Daiyu, come and pay your respects to King of Qi." A delicate young girl stepped forward and bowed gracefully. "Greetings, Lord Qi." Her waist was so slender that it seemed as if she would fall at the slightest gust of wind. Song Qingshu was very curious about this well-known Lin Rahai. He carefully sized her up. What left the deepest impression on him were her two curved eyebrows and a pair of eyes that seemed to contain both joy and affection. Sure enough, she is born with two dimples and a body full of illnesses. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. She had only spoken for a short while, but she was already panting and had tears on her face. What a typical sickly girl. Song Qingshu could see that she had a congenital defect. Thinking of how Lin Rahai had a similar feeling earlier, it was clearly a result of her family's inheritance. Sure enough, the heavens were jealous of beauties. Judging from her appearance, it would be difficult for her to live to the age of 30. If she experienced great sorrow and joy midway through, she might not even live to the age of 20. Song Qingshu was curious about Lin Daiyu, and Lin Daiyu was equally curious about Song Qingshu. She had heard about his deeds in various dramas. However, dramas were, after all, just dramas and always had a sense of unreality. Recently, however, Song Qingshu had arrived in Linen. What happened was so close at hand, especially that night when he climbed up to the sky to pray for rain. Many people had witnessed it with their own eyes. As a result, he had changed from a virtual image to a real person. Usually, Lin Daiyu didn't go out at all. She didn't want to see any strangers, let alone socializing with her father. However, when she heard that they were going to Prince Qi's mansion, she agreed without hesitation. She just wanted to see this legendary figure. When she quietly looked at him, she found that he was looking at her with a burning gaze. Lin Daiyu was startled and looked away in a panic. Just like Xue Baochai, her snow-white face was already flushed with embarrassment. Lin Rahai secretly frowned, thinking that Song Qingshu was indeed as lustful as the rumors said. In fact, if he was still single, with his current status and reputation, Lin Rahai wouldn't mind his daughter being a little closer to him. However, Song Qingshu already had a wife and was even discussing marriage with the current princess. How could he let his daughter jump into this pit of fire? Moreover, he had brought his daughter this time because Lin Rahai glanced at Jia Sherdao and Xue Ji, who were chatting happily in the distance. When he was about to drag his daughter over, Song Qingshu spoke again. "Sir Lin, let me introduce you to two people. Oh, although Lin Rahai wanted to run over and meet Jia Sherdao, it was not convenient for him to leave right away because of Song Qingshu's status. Pingji, Lingshan, come here. Song Qingshu waved at the two people not far away, then pointed at Lin Rahai and said, "Come and greet your uncle." Lin Rahai couldn't help but be surprised to see the boy and the girl in front of him. Even Lin Daiyu curiously stuck her head out from behind him to look at them. After Song Qingshu introduced them, Lin Rahai finally understood who they were. To be honest, although they were relatives, they weren't very close. If he had met them alone, Lin Rahai might have casually dismissed them. However, now that Song Qingshu was introducing them, the effect was completely different. "Oh, it's you." Lin Rahai laughed and even pulled his daughter over, saying, "Daiyu, come and greet your cousin." At first, he was a little reluctant, but he gradually realized that the Lin family had always been small, and he was not in good health. Having a nephew like this might be able to help his daughter in the future. With that thought, he became even more enthusiastic. He pulled Lin Pingji and Yu Lingshan to a place not far away and started chatting. Lin Pingji and Yu Lingshan were both overwhelmed by the favor and looked at Song Qingshu gratefully. Song Qingshu smiled at the two of them, signaling them to relax. Only then did the two of them hurriedly follow. "Sir Shi is here," the housekeeper reminded him. Song Qingshu looked up and saw Shi Miyuan walking over with a group of people. He said, "Congratulations, Prince Song." "Oh no, you're called King Qi now?" "Sir Shi, you're being too polite. Your daughter and I are friends." Song Qingshu smiled at the girl in red behind him. "Is that so?" Shi Miyuan looked at his daughter in surprise. "Shangyun, why haven't I heard you mention this before?" Shangyun opened her mouth, but she didn't know how to answer. She couldn't tell her father that his daughter had been played by this man. "I was wondering why you were encouraging me to intervene in Yu Fei's case. It turns out that it was to help King Qi." Shi Miyuan was also a smart person, and he quickly analyzed some clues. Shangyun nodded with a sad face, thinking that her daughter was forced by him. "You young people talk slowly. I'll go in first." Shi Miyuan couldn't help but be happy when he found out that his daughter and Song Qingshu had such a friendship. But Shangyun couldn't be happy, and Wei Rulin, who was next to her, couldn't be happy. Looking at their sad faces, Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Why? Am I so scary?" No. Both of them answered in unison, but their tone was a little panicked. "All right, don't look sad. It's good that you know our relationship in private. At least on the surface, we are still friends." Song Qingshu's smile fell into the eyes of the two, but it was even scarier than the devil. Shangyun had seen his means, and had long regarded him as a demon king. Wei Rulin's pride was completely destroyed by him, leaving a shadow of fear in her heart. Staying by Song Qingshu's side was a kind of torture for both of them. Fortunately, at this time, another important person came, and they had the opportunity to sneak in quietly. "Prince Yi and Prince Beijing are here," the housekeeper reminded Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows. He had always heard about Prince Yi, but he had never seen him. According to various intelligence reports, Prince Yi was obviously not satisfied with being a prince, and had always coveted his brother's position as the crown prince. After all, whether it was Prince Yi or the crown prince, they were not Zhao Gou's biological son, but were adopted by the sons of other members of the royal family. Since that was the case, why couldn't he be the crown prince? There was another reason why Song Qingshu was familiar with Prince Yi, and that was because he knew that Prince Yi was the mastermind behind the White Lotus Group. Speaking of which, although they had not met before, they had dealt with each other many times. "Congratulations, Prince Qi is indeed as handsome and powerful as the rumors say. You make Gui Chang feel ashamed." Prince Yi was born with a dignified appearance and a talent. Even without his noble identity, with his appearance, he was definitely the dream lover of many girls. "I have long heard that Prince Yi is a famous, virtuous king, and today I see that you are indeed worthy of your reputation." Song Qingshu flattered politely while secretly sneering. He had been influenced by so many television dramas in his previous life, and was already clear about the tricks of these virtuous kings. except for virtuous King the Eighth, which other virtuous kings did not have the idea of buying people's hearts. Chapter 1369. Song Qing-shu never expected Zhao Shicheng to be the Duke of Beijing from Dream of the Red Chamber. But on second thought, he was relieved. After all, Zhao Shicheng was a member of the royal family, so it was normal for him to be conferred the title of Duke. Duke of Beijing, Duke of Beijing. Song Qing-shu was amazed. After all, Duke of Beijing was a famous perfect male god in Dream of the Red Chamber. Some radiologists even speculated that Lin Dayu married Duke of Beijing based on some foreshadowing. Looking at Zhao Shicheng and then at the weak Lin Dayu not far away, Song Qing-shu shook his head and laughed involuntarily. At least in this world, the two of them should have nothing to do with each other. So Brother Zhao is Duke of Beijing. I really had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai in the Shen Garden. Song Qing-shu cupped his hands and smiled. At the same time, he felt strange. He was a dignified duke. Why would he marry a woman who had been married twice? Could this be the legendary true love? Brother Song, there is no need to be so polite. Zhao Shicheng could not help but feel pleased when he heard the other party address him so intimately. His tone also became warm. The few of them stood together and chatted for a while. Song Qing-shu led them into the house. After all, the important figures in the imperial court had all arrived. The rest of them did not need him to stand here to welcome them. While chatting with a group of people, Huang Rong suddenly passed by him and said to him in a low voice, "I have something to say to you." Song Qing-shu looked up and saw that Huang Rong had already walked far away. There was nothing strange about her. If he did not believe his hearing, he would have thought that he had heard wrongly. Finding an opportunity, Song Qing-shu left the crowd and carefully chased in the direction that Huang Rong had just left. He was curious about what she had to say to him. Could it be that she wanted to relive old memories with him? He could not help but giggle when he thought of the excitement. However, he quickly shook his head, knowing that it was impossible. It only existed in his imagination. He came to a secluded place in the garden. A graceful young woman was standing in front of a rose bush in a daze. The faint moonlight was like a layer of gauze draped over her face. She was truly more beautiful than the flowers. Rong, Song Qing-shu walked over and could not help but shout. The graceful and charming woman was naturally Huang Rong. Hearing his voice, she turned her head and indifferently replied, "I hope that the Prince of Qi will conduct himself with dignity." Song Qing-shu could not help but smile bitterly. "May I know why Chief Huang is looking for me?" Huang Rong didn't answer directly. Instead, she looked around curiously. "Why don't I see Sister Xing from last time?" The stunning woman from last time had left a very deep impression on her. She had seen many beautiful women in Jianghu for so many years, but it was the first time she had seen such a beautiful woman. Huang Rong didn't know why Song Qing-shu was accompanied by such a devastatingly beautiful woman, and the two of them seemed to be quite close. She didn't know why, but she felt extremely unhappy in her heart. He was indeed a greedy and lecherous lecher. "Qing, he family Tian." She said of King, she is Qi Shanza Chu Shan. Huang Rong blushed. "Of course not." She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Can I ask you for a favor?" Song Qing-shu was startled. Feeling flattered, he smiled bitterly. "Why are you treating me like an outsider? With our relationship, why would I refuse?" Huang Rong could not help but spit. "What does it have to do with you?" Song Qing-shu looked at her and shrugged. "If you say there isn't, then there isn't." Huang Rong felt her body heat up. Scenes of the Jin Kingdom appeared in her mind. She could not help but recall what happened in the Jin Kingdom. With great difficulty, she calmed herself. "I want to ask you not to do anything harmful to Brother Jing." Song Qing-shu was startled. "Why did you suddenly say this?" "That's none of your business." Huang Rong bit her lip. "Do you agree?" Song Qing-shu was silent for a while, then nodded. "Hirogua is a great hero for the country and the people. Everyone in the world admires him. Why would I do anything to harm him?" "Thank you." Huang Rong was secretly relieved to hear his sincerity. The reason why she had come to Song Qingshu for this promise was that she had learned about the competition from Jia Sherdao. She had a keen understanding that neither Jia Sherdao nor Han Xingzhou would allow the two of them to compete fairly in order to ensure that they would win. She did not care about what Jia Sherdao wanted to do, since it would benefit Brother Jing anyway. She had never been a naive saint, and she would not refuse Jia Sherdao's secret help. However, she had to be careful about Han Xingzhou. Huang Rong thought about it, and she was most worried that Han Xingzhou would ask Song Qingshu, who was close to him, to help. Although Brother Jing was very good at martial arts, there was still a gap between him and Song Qingshu, who was inhuman. Even though she didn't want to have anything to do with Song Qingshu, Huang Rong still braced herself and came to find him. Now that she had received his promise, Huang Rong's heart was finally at ease. As long as Song Qingshu didn't get involved with Brother Jing's martial arts and her own intelligence, Han Xingzhou's tricks were destined to be useless. After thanking him, Huang Rong turned around and left. Song Qingshu subconsciously grabbed her wrist. "What are you doing?" Feeling the heat of his hand, Huang Rong was embarrassed and angry. Song Qingshu said gloomily, "Rong, why do you have to be so cruel? We have done more intimate things. What's wrong with holding hands?" Hearing him mention the Jin kingdom, Huang Rong's heart skipped a beat, and her breathing became rapid. But now, she was rational and said, "Let go of me. There are so many people here today. If they see us, none of us will be able to live. It doesn't matter. If worst comes to worst, I will give up my position as king of Qi." Song Qingshu looked at her with a smile, still not intending to let go. "You may be shameless, but I do." Huang Rong blushed. Even though she was touched that he was willing to give up everything for her, that was all there was to it. Their identities and social ethics meant that the two of them would never end up together. Moreover, the one she loved the most in her heart was still her brother Jing. This man in front of her was just a bottle of sweet poison. "Don't worry. With my martial arts, I will only know in advance if someone comes near." Song Qingshu comforted her. Huang Rong glared at him and said, "You said before that you would not disturb my life. How can a man not keep his word? Don't make me look down on you." Seeing her firm attitude, Song Qingshu also knew that he could not force her. He could only smile bitterly and said, "Answer one of my questions first, and I will let you go." "What question?" Huang Rong pursed her lips. She was worried that if she continued to pester here, she would be seen. As long as she could get rid of him as soon as possible, let alone one question, even if there were 10 questions, she would quickly answer. Song Qingshu's eyes fell on her slightly bulging belly and said, "The child in your belly." Huang Rong immediately interrupted him. "Don't think about it. It is not yours." A trace of loneliness flashed on Song Qingshu's face. He let go of her hand and said, "I just want to ask how your body is now. Is the pregnancy serious? Do you like to eat sour food? I will send someone to send you some plums." The resentment in Huang Rong's heart lessened a little when she saw that he was even more naggy than an old maid. Her tone was also gentler than before. "Don't worry. I'm a person who practices martial arts after all. I'm not like those delicate young ladies from rich families. My body is very good. Maisie, you don't have to send me off. I have to avoid arousing suspicion." Feeling that her tone was not as stiff as before, Song Qingshu was happy. The two chatted casually for a while, and the communication was much more normal than before. Although it was not very intimate, at least it was not as deliberately alienated as before. Guessing that the banquet was about to begin, the two quietly returned to the hall one after the other. Song Qingshu did not deliberately arrange it, but everyone seemed to know each other and could find their own seats. At the main table, in addition to Song Qingshu himself, Prince Yi and Prince Beijing definitely sat at the main table. Several other ministers at the level of prime minister also sat there, such as political advisor Han Xingzhou, privy envoy Jia Sherdao, advisor Chen Ziqiang, and imperial censor Shi Miyuan. Several other important figures, such as political advisor Wu Qian and Shueji, automatically sat at the secondary table. Although their positions were the same as Han Xingzhou ranked first among many political advisors, and he was far more powerful than the other two in terms of influence and real power. Surprisingly, Guijing, Huang Rong, and Ling Hucheng were also invited to sit at the main table. On the one hand, they had a good reputation, and on the other hand, everyone knew that they were the protagonists of the upcoming martial arts competition. Therefore, no one had any objection. With Han Xingzhou taking the lead, a group of people toasted to Song Qing-shu, congratulating him on his promotion to Prince Qi. What followed was a series of toasts, and everyone was slightly tipsy. At this time, a group of maids began to serve a new round of dishes. Looking at one of the maids with a graceful figure, Huang Rong secretly curled her lips. Song Qing-shu was indeed a lecherous person. Even the maids in his residence were so outstanding. Although she could not see the maid's appearance, based on her graceful and moving figure, she was definitely an extraordinary beauty. The maidservant lowered her head and placed a dish on Song Qing-shu's side. Huang Rong suddenly frowned. Song Qing-shu was currently sitting in the main seat. What kind of maidservant would be so insensible as to serve dishes from the side of the main seat? Song Qing-shu was chatting with the people beside him. Clearly, no one had noticed anything out of the ordinary. Suddenly, a cold light flashed. The maid suddenly pulled out a dagger from under the dish and fiercely stabbed at Song Qing-shu's chest. Careful, because Huang Rong had been suspicious from the very beginning. She was the first to react. Subconsciously, she grabbed a wine cup and shot it at Huang Yaoshi. Although her skill was not as good as Huang Yaoshi's, the power of the wine cup she shot out could not be underestimated. Chapter 1370. While Song Qing-shu was in a daze, Guijing, who was beside him, had already reacted. He had always been an upright person and was extremely loyal to his friends. Moreover, Song Qing-shu had saved his life, so how could he just stand by and watch? With a roar, he flashed between the two and blocked the maid assassin. Although the maid seemed to be good at martial arts, how could she be a match for a master like Guijing? After exchanging several moves, the maid cried out in alarm, and the dagger in her hand was knocked out of her hand. Guijing did not give her any time to catch her breath and used the 18 dragon subduing palms to attack. His palm strength was extraordinary. If she did not die, she would be seriously injured. As for the fact that the other party was a woman, he did not think too much about it. In his eyes, she was a vicious assassin. He had been tempered in the flames of war for many years and experienced many assassinations, so he instinctively showed no mercy to assassins. Just as Guijing's palm was about to hit the maid, suddenly there was a dragon's cry from the side, and a cold light attacked. Guijing's martial arts were so high that he had long been trained to see and listen in all directions. He hurriedly used the 18 dragon-subduing palms to try to block the opponent's longsword. Unexpectedly, the opponent's sword technique was so mysterious that she dodged his palm strength at an incredible angle and attacked him like a maggot in a tarsal bone. Good! Guijing shouted and did not dare to be careless. He used 120% of his energy to meet the opponent. The two of them fought back and forth. One sword technique was exquisite and light. The other's palm technique was simple and heavy. It was a very exciting fight. Huang Rong saw that her husband was caught off guard and lost the upper hand. The opponent's sword technique was too magical, and the attack was like a tide. She was worried that her husband would have an accident. She was about to help him despite her pregnancy when she suddenly saw the appearance of the sword user. She could not help but angrily say, "General Wu, why are you helping the assassin?" It turned out that it was Ling Hucheng who was pretending to be Wu Tianda. After her interruption, Ling Hucheng took the opportunity to withdraw his sword and jump out of the battle. Everyone present looked at him. Even Han Xingzhou and the others who were on the same side as him frowned and stared at him, waiting for a reasonable explanation. Ling Hucheng sheathed his sword and said in a very lonely tone, "Because this assassin is Song Qing-shu's married wife." Cries of alarm rang out in the hall, and a group of people turned to look at the assassin. At this time, the assassin had already been restrained by the guards who had rushed over. Even though she was dressed like a maid, everyone could still see that she was extremely beautiful. The knife on her neck shone with a cold light, making her skin look so white that it was almost transparent, and there was a faint layer of redness. The group of people secretly praised in their hearts, "What a beautiful woman!" Sage none? After all, Huang Rong was a Jianghu person. She quickly recognized the woman's identity. It was Ren Yingying, whom she had not seen for many days. At this moment, Ren Yingying's delicate body trembled as she looked at Ling Hu Chong. She muttered to herself, "Brother Chong, is that you?" It was fine if others couldn't recognize it, but how could she not recognize Ling Hu Chong's swordsmanship? Just as she was about to ask him, she immediately realized that since the other party was in disguise, he must have his own difficulties. If she were to expose his identity, it might bring unpredictable danger to him. At this moment, she heard Ling Hu Chong say, "The assassin is Song Qingshu's married wife." She immediately felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar, and all her hopes turned to dust. Song Qingshu also spoke at this time. "My wife and I have always liked to play this kind of joke. We are very sorry to have disturbed everyone's mood." As he spoke, he walked to the side of the guards and gently waved his sleeve. The guards immediately felt a soft force on their hands, and the long knives in their hands fell back. Song Qingshu stepped forward and took Ren Yingying's small hand to sit back at the main table. Because he had heard Ling Hu Chong's words earlier, he felt as if his heart had been cut by a knife. At this moment, it was as if his soul had left his body, and he allowed Ling Hu Chong to pull him. Seeing this scene, Ling Hu Chong, who was not far away, narrowed his eyes slightly. He only felt annoyed and wanted to vomit. He picked up the wine cup in front of the table and drained it in one gulp. When he first heard Song Qingshu's words in Yangzhou, he did not completely believe it. After that, he specially went to investigate and was shocked to find that Yingying had indeed bowed to heaven and earth to marry Song Qingshu. At first, he guessed that she might have been forced, but when he found out that the officiator of the wedding was Wudong's Zhang Sanfeng, he completely despaired. After all, Zhang Sanfeng was a person of virtue and prestige, and his character was also well known. If there was any forced circumstances involved, he would definitely not officiate the wedding for these two. When he thought of this, Ling Hu Chong drank another cup of wine in one gulp. Song Qingshu pulled Ren Ying to sit down and introduced her to the crowd. "This is my wife, young Miss Ren of the Sun Moon sect." As expected of a talented man and a beautiful woman, since the main character had spoken, how could the others not be tactful enough to mention the assassination just now? They all took the opportunity to compliment each other. However, only they knew what each of them were thinking in their hearts. Princey glanced greedily at Ren Yingying's stunning face and thought to himself, "I originally thought that the women in Jianghu were all that kind of country bumpkins. I didn't expect there to be such a beautiful woman in Jianghu besides Huang Rong. Right, that Yu Fei's daughter from last time also seemed to be an outstanding beauty. It seems that I have to collect more from the White Lotus Society." Han Xingzhou secretly shook his head. This was like a knife above the head, and a young man really couldn't control himself. It was a pity that the mother and daughter of the Chun family had been sent to the palace. Otherwise, it would be good to use them to win him over. If he knew that Qin Yuan was now living in the inner residence, who knew how excited he would be? Jia Sherdao, on the other hand, was deep in thought. The power of the surname Song was really not to be underestimated. If the Golden Snake Camp joined forces with the Sun Moon sect, then the Isle of Heroes' control of the Central Plains would be slowed down again. Shirmi Yuan secretly frowned. Judging from his daughter's reaction when they entered the door, it was obvious that they had a special relationship. He didn't know if Wei Ruolin knew. Guijing couldn't help but whisper to his wife next to him, "Brother Song is good at everything, except that he's a little too much of a playboy. He is indeed a little pervert." Huang Rong's face was as white as a sheet, and under the candlelight, she looked especially delicate and beautiful. After that, the banquet returned to peace. Song Qingshu chatted with the guests while looking at Ren Yingying from time to time. He couldn't help but secretly frown when he saw that she looked so heartbroken. At that moment, he felt as if there was a little black devil beside his ear, inciting him. The reason why Rin Yingying was so restless was mainly because he had indulged her too much. As long as he could have her body, she would resign herself to her fate. After all, the seniors had said that Tao was the fastest shortcut to a woman's heart. Although Rin Yingying was the saintess of the Sun-Moon sect, which was out of reach for ordinary people, it wasn't difficult for Song Qing-shu to have her body. He just needed to inject some joyful true qi in her body, and he was sure that she would change her personality and become extremely passionate. He could also use Ling Hu Chong to threaten him. After all, Ling Hu Chong was at a critical stage before the martial arts competition. If he did something to him, he could guarantee that his future would be ruined. For the sake of her lover, she was likely to sacrifice her innocence. All the villains in TV dramas did this, so they had obtained many women from the main characters. The more Song Qing-shu thought about it, the more tempted he became. However, in the end, he gave up on this tempting impulse. After all, a melon that was forcefully picked wouldn't be sweet, of course. He wouldn't be so kind as to help the two of them. He just thought that the first two methods were too inferior, and he might not be able to win Rin Yingying's heart in the end. If it were an ordinary woman, Song Qing-shu only needed to have her body, but Rin Yingying was different. Looking at Yu Lingshan from the corner of his eyes, Song Qing-shu immediately came up with a plan. At that moment, Han Xingzhou was looking at Gui Jing meaningfully, and Jia Shidao was also looking at Ling Hu Chong with a serious expression. Before, the two of them had subconsciously wanted to increase their chances of winning, but after watching the short competition between the two of them, everyone was more and more determined to play tricks. Jia Shidao, in particular, had originally thought that Gui Jing had the upper hand in terms of martial arts, but when Wuxi had the upper hand, she had actually made Gui Jing feel a little breathless. That sword technique was really amazing, and he also noticed that Wuxi's inner strength had improved a lot recently. If it was a real fair competition, Jia Shidao wasn't as confident as before. Glancing at Lady Beijing, Jia Shidao decided to speed up the implementation of his plan. Ling Hu Chong didn't even realize that he had been involved in the center of the storm. At that moment, he only felt disheartened, as if he had been abandoned by the whole world. He just subconsciously poured wine into his mouth. At first, he drank one glass at a time, but later, he felt that it wasn't enough. He even grabbed the wine pot and drank directly. Han Xingzhou frowned and finally couldn't help but remind him, "Tianda, you drank too much today." Ling Hu Chong didn't want to stay there anymore, so he took the opportunity to stand up and say, "I'm a little uncomfortable, so I'll leave now." After saying that, he couldn't help but burp loudly, which made the people around him frown and avoid him. "Do you want me to send someone to see you off?" Song Qing-shu asked with a smile. Seeing his smile, Ling Hu Chong felt irritated for no reason. He waved his hand impatiently and said, "No need." After saying that, he turned around and staggered away. At this time, Yu Lingshan, who was not far away, suddenly looked in Song Qing-shu's direction with a puzzled expression, as if she was listening to something. Then, she revealed a look of surprise and delight, and quietly chased after Ling Hu Chong. Seeing that Ling Hu Chong had left, Rin Yingying's body stiffened. She subconsciously wanted to stand up, but then she realized something and sat down again, biting her lip and not saying a word. While others were chatting, Song Qing-shu quietly said to her, "You don't have to be so cruel. You want to kill your husband as soon as you see him?" Hearing that, Rin Yingying's face flashed with a trace of anger. "You lied to me, but I didn't force you." Song Qing-shu shrugged. "Back then, you were willing to marry me." Rin Yingying held her breath, not knowing how to refute, so she simply turned her head away. "Do you want to talk to your brother, Chong?" Song Qing-shu suddenly asked. Rin Yingying's body trembled, and she looked back at him in disbelief. Chapter 1371. Rin Yingying raised her head to look at him in astonishment, her eyes filled with confusion. She had not expected him to be so magnanimous. In a moment, her impression of him improved greatly. Recalling the bits and pieces of their interactions, she could not help but begin to wonder if she had been too harsh on him. After all, her parents had arranged for her to be his wife in name. In the end, not long ago, he had set up an engagement, and now he had even come to assassinate him. But when she thought of how he had tried to separate her and Brother Chong, Rening Ying was instantly at a loss. There is no need to worry about me. I know that you must have many things to say to Ling Hu Chong right now. Go, go, Song Qing-shu said using secret sound transmission. Rening Ying gave him a deep look, but in the end, she stood up and left. She truly did have many things to say to Ling Hu Chong. For example, she had agreed to marry Song Qing-shu because her father had threatened her with his life. She had married Song Qing-shu in an attempt to get rid of the engagement, but by a freak combination of factors. Watching Ren Ying's departing figure, Song Qing-shu inwardly mocked himself. He was becoming more and more black-bellied. However, heaven and earth were heartless and regarded all living things as straw dogs. He had never believed in the saying that good would be rewarded and evil would be repaid with evil. Of course, this saying was more in line with objective laws. That was because the majority of people still had good hearts. Those who did evil would break the rules and naturally suffer backlash from the rules. However, this did not mean that good would be rewarded and evil would be repaid with evil. As a result, he did not feel the slightest psychological burden when it was appropriate to use some black-belly tricks. He was looking for an opportunity to sneak out and follow behind Rening Ying. Although he had made various arrangements, the plans of man were no match for the plans of heaven. If the two of them were to rekindle their old feelings, he did not want to wear the hat of forgiveness. But at this moment, Han Xingzhou pulled him aside and said, Qing-shu, Big Brother wishes you double happiness in advance. Double happiness? For a moment, Song Qing-shu could not react. Han Xingzhou laughed heartily. The first happiness is naturally the conferment of the title of Prince of Qi. The second happiness is your marriage with the two Empress concubines. Thinking of Zhao Hu'er and Zhao Yuanyuan in the Jin Kingdom's palace, Song Qing-shu could not help but feel a trace of tenderness in his heart. Jia Sherdao smiled and said, Too many things have happened in Jing recently. It's good to have such a happy event. Everyone chimed in, causing Huang Rong to frown slightly. She thought that Miss Run had just appeared as Song Qing-shu's wife, but these people's words had not taken her into consideration at all. It was clear that although Miss Run had a high status in the martial arts world, in the eyes of these big shots in the imperial court, she was still just a woman from the martial arts world. When she thought of her own identity, Huang Rong could not help but sympathize with her. Song Qing-shu secretly sneered. Because of Yu Fei's case, the prestige of the imperial court had taken a great hit. At first, they were denouncing Qin Hui, Ma Chi-chun, Zhang Jun, and the others, but the denouncing became more and more intense. It looked like the spear was about to be pointed at Zhao Guo. Zhao Guo was smart enough to immediately confer the title of Prince of Qi and then announce the marriage of the Empress concubines, all to divert the public's attention from the current effect. Zhao Guo had obviously achieved his goal, but he also understood that with Zhao Guo and the Southern Song dynasty's cunning officials, there was no way they would let him marry the princess so easily. As expected, Han Xingzhou quickly spoke again. Qing-shu, you also know that the two Empress concubines have suffered a lot in the Jin Kingdom. Their father and brothers are also suffering. It is not very appropriate for them to get married now. Coincidentally, we are planning to conquer the Jin Kingdom in the north. Why don't we wait until we conquer the Jin Kingdom and give the two Empress concubines the best present? At that time, we can also shut the mouths of the public. After all, Qing-shu, you already have a wife. Marrying two princesses at the same time is unprecedented. Song Qing-shu secretly sneered. The Southern Song dynasty was completely using the Empress concubines as a bargaining chip, using this to blackmail him into risking his life for the Southern Song dynasty in the upcoming northern expedition. But he was not stupid. Why would he just go and be their cannon fodder? But when he thought of the fact that the Jin Kingdom was now under his control, Song Qing-shu felt that it was somewhat funny. If these people knew that he was the ruler of the Jin Kingdom, would their jaws drop? Very well. Even though he was laughing coldly in his heart, Song Qingshu still agreed on the surface. After all, the other party's reason was very dignified, especially when he already had a wife at home. Marrying the emperor's concubine was indeed inappropriate. Seeing him agree so readily, the prime ministers and officials all let out a sigh of relief. The atmosphere became relaxed and cheerful again. After Ling Huchong left the banquet, he staggered and staggered on the street. Just now, he was drowning his sorrows in alcohol. He didn't know how much wine he had drunk, but now that he was tipsy, he finally couldn't hold on any longer. He tripped over a stone and couldn't maintain his balance any longer, falling to the ground. This fall caused his stomach to churn endlessly, and he finally couldn't help but vomit. Just as he was feeling unwell, he suddenly heard a surprised voice. "Eldest senior brother, is that you?" Ling Hu Chong's body trembled. This familiar voice had been on his mind day and night. He had even dreamt of the happy times when he was on Mount Hua. Could it be that she would appear after he got drunk? Should he get drunk a few more times in the future? Thinking it was just an illusion, Ling Hu Chong didn't answer. He continued to spit out the acid in discomfort. Suddenly, a soft hand gently patted his back. "Eldest senior brother, why did you drink so much?" This time, the voice was even more real, and there was also a pair of gentle hands. Ling Huchong raised his head in disbelief. A beautiful, snow-white face appeared in front of him. Who else could it be but the junior sister that he had been yearning for day and night? "Eldest senior brother," Yu Lingshan called out to him again. Her eyes were full of pity and heartache. Ling Huchong suddenly pushed her away and said in a dry voice, "Miss, you have mistaken me for someone else." He was now reeking of alcohol, and there was a lot of filth on his body from vomiting. He did not want his beloved junior sister to see him in such a sorry state, so he did not dare to acknowledge her. "How could I have mistaken you for someone else?" Yu Lingshan sighed faintly. "In fact, when I saw your sword technique at the banquet, I had already recognized it, but I was not too sure until someone told me." Obviously, she did not want to explain more about this. She immediately changed the topic. "Eldest senior brother, did you drink so much because of Miss Rin?" Ling Hu Chong smiled bitterly. In his mind, the scene of junior sister and Lin Pingji's intimacy kept appearing. He thought to himself, "I drank so much because of you." Feeling more and more annoyed, Ling Hu Chong struggled to stand up and try to walk forward. However, at this time, he was already a mess and could not walk straight at all. He swayed as if he would fall at any time. "Eldest senior brother, be careful." Yu Lingshan was worried that he would fall, so she quickly ran up to support him. Her whole body was under his armpit, and her other hand was around his waist. Although the posture was a little intimate, she did not feel that it was inappropriate. After all, the two of them had grown up together since they were young. She did not know how many times they behaved like this. In her heart, Ling Huchong was no different from her own brother. Feeling the gentleness in junior sister's voice, especially when the two of them were so close, and the faint fragrance of a young girl entered his nose. Although Ling Huchong's rationality told him that the one he loved the most was Ying, his body's reaction could not be faked. His heart was thumping, and when he felt Yu Lingshan's soft body, he immediately felt a dizzying happiness. Because he could not bear to let go of this feeling, Ling Huchong did not refuse and let her support him. The two of them walked on the street, leaning against each other. Under the illumination of the candles on both sides, their shadows stretched out like an intimate couple. After Ying left the residence, she jogged in the direction that Ling Huchong had left. She could vaguely see his figure and was about to call out to him in excitement when she saw Yu Lingshan beside him. She swallowed the words "Brother Chong" that were at the tip of her tongue. Seeing the two of them tightly hugging each other, Ying's eyes gradually welled up with tears. She knew very well that Ling Huchong liked Yu Lingshan. Back in Luoyang's green bamboo alley, Ling Huchong had mistaken her for his mother-in-law and had poured out his admiration for his junior sister in full detail. It was also because of this that she became curious about this man, which eventually developed into love. It was precisely because she understood this feeling that Ren Yingying had always been very magnanimous in front of Ling Hucheng. She respected this pure love and did not act out of jealousy like those foolish women. It was precisely because of this that she gradually won Ling Hucheng's heart. At the same time, she captured the hearts of a large number of readers, becoming the ideal wife in countless people's hearts. But no matter how magnanimous Ren Yingying was, she would not go so far as to have no bottom line. Seeing the two of them so intimately hugging each other, she finally found it somewhat unbearable. In that instant, she felt that all her previous efforts had lost all meaning. Could it be that the matter between me and Song Qing-shu had completely broken Brother Chang's heart, causing him to return to junior sister's side? Ren Yingying had always been intelligent and quickly thought of this possibility. But she soon shook her head. Even if this was true, it was just an incentive. Brother Chong still loved his junior sister the most. She had previously fantasized that she might be able to replace Miss Yu's position, but now it seemed that it was just wishful thinking. Especially with her current status and her engagement to Song Qing-shu. Ren Yingying deeply glanced at Ling Hucheng's back and sighed in disappointment. She turned to leave, intending to completely end this love affair. But she had only taken a few steps when she heard the sound of weapons clashing behind her, mixed with the tender shouts of a young woman. Ren Yingying subconsciously turned her head and discovered that a group of black-clothed men were surrounding Ling Hucheng and Yu Lingshan. Although the black-clothed men were skilled in martial arts, Ling Hucheng's cultivation should not have been much of a threat. But Ling Hucheng was currently completely drunk and found it difficult to even walk, much less practice martial arts. Chapter 1372. By the time Ren Yingying rushed over, the group of black-clothed men had already subdued Ling Hucheng and Yu Lingshan. They couldn't help but be surprised to see more people rushing over. As the saintess of the Sun Moon sect, Ren Yingying had been surrounded by top-notch experts since she was a child. Naturally, her martial arts were not weak. Soon, several black-clothed men were injured by her. It's the saintess of the Sun Moon sect. Someone had already recognized her by now. Since you recognized me, how dare you be so rude? Ren Yingying shouted. Her beautiful face had a dignified expression. The black-clothed men stopped in their tracks and looked at each other. Obviously, they had begun to hesitate. After all, the Sun Moon sect was known as the #1 devil sect in the Central Plains. It was very powerful, and they naturally wouldn't provoke such an enemy if they could avoid it. In the end, the group of people unanimously cast a questioning gaze at the other black-clothed man. That black-clothed man was tall and sturdy. Even though his face was covered, he still had an extraordinary temperament standing in the middle of the group. When he recognized Ren Yingying, he also frowned. Rumor has it that Miss Run has married the Golden Snake King, Song Qing-shu, not long ago. May I ask if this is true? The leader of the black-clothed men looked at Ren Yingying and said in a low voice. Ren Yingying subconsciously glanced at Ling Hucheng, and when she saw him looking at her with a face full of anticipation, she couldn't help but feel warm in her heart. She was just about to explain that her marriage with Song Qing-shu was just a misunderstanding. But her gaze suddenly noticed Ling Hucheng and Yu Lingshan's hands that were tightly held together, and a trace of bitterness instantly arose in her heart. Just as she was about to speak, she changed her words. Yes, I'm indeed married to Song Qing-shu. Hearing her own admission, Ling Hucheng's face instantly turned ashen. Yu Lingshan looked at him worriedly and gently patted his hand to comfort him. Seeing Ling Hucheng's reaction, Ren Yingying's heart also ached. However, she had always been a very wise woman. She wouldn't say this just because she was jealous. The black-clothed men in front of her were all highly skilled in martial arts. In terms of martial arts, she was definitely no match for them. The only thing she could rely on was her special identity. She could tell that the holy nun of the Sun Moon sect alone was not enough to make these people afraid, so she brought up Song Qing-shu's name. Although she was unwilling to admit it, Song Qing-shu's reputation in the past 2 years was even greater than that of the Sun Moon sect. Originally, He thought that the other party would retreat in the face of difficulties, but unexpectedly, the leader of the black-clothed men laughed out loud. This is truly a case of wearing out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find what you're looking for without even looking for it. I haven't even gone to settle the score with the surnamed Song, but his wife has taken the initiative to send herself to my doorstep. Ren Yingying's expression instantly changed. How could she not understand that these people in front of her were Song Qingshu's enemies? She immediately cursed Song Qingshu to death in her heart. "You bastard, you keep bullying me. I finally wanted to use your name, but in the end, I brought trouble to myself. What a bastard. Capture him." The leader of the black-clothed men waved his hand, and the group of subordinates received the order. Without any hesitation, they all fiercely pounced over. Ren Yingying panicked and hastily pulled out the Chongying sword in her hand. Using the sharpness of the sword, she barely managed to withstand the black-clothed men's attack. Looking at the sword in her hand, Ren Yingying couldn't help but think of the time when Song Qingshu wore a ghost mask and pretended to be a ghost. With one hand holding her and the other using the Chongying sword, he easily forced back the many experts of Shaolin Temple and Song Mountain Sect. If he were here, how could these black-clothed men stand a chance against him? Ren Yingying suddenly reacted. Why did she think of that bastard? Because of this moment of daze, the leader of the black-clothed men had already found an opening. In a flash, he appeared next to her. Ren Yingying's beautiful face paled. Just as she was about to counterattack, her acupuncture point was already sealed. "Take them away." The leader of the black-clothed men pointed at Ren Yingying and Yu Lingshan. The group of subordinates was stunned. They subconsciously pointed at Ling Huchong and asked, "What about him? Just leave him here." The leader of the black-clothed men replied, "Didn't we plan to kidnap him from the beginning?" One of the subordinates raised an objection. The leader of the black-clothed men glared at him. "Can I change my mind?" Intimidated by his power, the group of subordinates immediately didn't dare to speak. Looking at Ren Yingying and Yu Lingshan, the leader of the black-clothed men smiled. Today's trip was really a pleasant surprise. Originally, when he kidnapped Wu Shi, he was worried that the identity of the Imperial equipment would be too sensitive. He was worried about how to deal with the consequences. Now that these two women appeared, his problem was easily solved. According to the intimate appearance of Wu Shi and Yu Lingshan, as well as the scene of them holding hands at the critical moment, it could be seen that Wu Shi cared a lot about this woman. Since this was the case, his original goal could be achieved through Yu Lingshan. There was no need to take the risk of kidnapping the Imperial equipment. Moreover, he had already recognized Yu Lingshan's identity. He thought that he might be able to force out the whereabouts of the Bishie swordplay from her. As for Ren Yingying, she was even more useful. He and Song Qingshu had a deep hatred, but he knew his own limits. He knew that whether it was martial arts or power, he was far from being Song Qingshu's opponent. He could only find an opponent of the same level to deal with him, and then he would sit on a mountain and watch the tigers fight. Jia Sherdao was also one of his enemies. Let them fight each other. Having made up his mind, the black-clothed man deliberately said to Ling Huchong before he left, "You have to lose the next fight with Guijing. Otherwise, you won't ever see your friends again." He didn't say it too explicitly, but the information he left was enough. When Song Qingshu, Han Xingzhou, and Jia Sherdao fought, he would just wait to reap the benefits. Ling Huchong struggled to save the two women, but unfortunately, he was too drunk. His hands and feet didn't listen to him at all. After a few hits, he was once again beaten to the ground. He could only watch helplessly as the man in black took the two women away. Ling Huchong was lying on the ground with tears and snot flowing down his face. He was full of regret. If he hadn't been so drunk, he wouldn't have been able to watch those people take the two girls away with him. At that moment, he hated alcohol for the first time. He secretly swore that as long as the two girls could be saved, he would never touch alcohol again. But it was not easy to save the two girls, and he didn't even know who his enemies were. The more he thought about it, the more he regretted it. Ling Huchong couldn't help but lie on the ground and cry. "Why are you here alone? Where's Yingying?" At that moment, he heard a confused voice. He was very familiar with this voice. Usually, Ling Hucheng hated the owner of this voice. But when he heard this voice, it was like the sound of nature. He immediately raised his head and grabbed the man's leg. Hurry! Hurry up and save them. The man was Song Qing-shu. When he heard this, he couldn't help but change his expression. What did you say? They were taken away by a group of black-clothed men. Ling Hucheng said hurriedly. Direction. Song Qing-shu was both shocked and angry. He had planned for Yu Lingshan and Ren Yingying to find Ling Hucheng one after the other. He wanted to make it look like a waste of time and make Ren Yingying give up completely. He had planned to follow them out and watch them in secret. He hadn't expected that Han Yuezhou and Jia Shidao would talk about something before they left, which had delayed them for an hour. He hadn't expected that something would happen during that hour. Over there, although Ling Hucheng was dizzy, he still tried to point in the direction where the black-clothed men had disappeared. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Qing-shu had disappeared. Ling Hucheng couldn't help but rub his eyes and try to look forward. Just then, he vaguely saw a figure gradually disappearing. He couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. That person's lightness skill was simply a gift from the heavens. It wasn't something that could be achieved by humans. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Ling Hucheng was still worrying about his personal gains and losses, not knowing whether or not Song Qing-shu would be able to save them. Suddenly, a cool breeze brushed past, and Song Qing-shu was once again standing beside him. You didn't find them? Seeing that there was no one next to him, Ling Hucheng's heart suddenly sank. No. Song Qing-shu also looked a little upset. With my skills, if I wanted to catch up with them, I would have caught up with them long ago. Obviously, they scattered into different houses on the way. Although Lin and City wasn't comparable to the imperial capital and Shanghai in the future, it was still one of the largest cities in the world. There were countless houses in the city, so it was easier said than done to find people. What on earth happened just now? Song Qing-shu looked at Ling Hucheng with a frosty face. Just now, Ling Hucheng struggled to stand up, but affected the injury caused by the other party's kick. As a result, as soon as he opened his mouth, his throat turned over again. He couldn't help but lie on the ground and vomit again. Song Qing-shu frowned. He grabbed his clothes and lifted him to the side. He pointed at the back of Ling Hucheng's body, and an incomparably abundant inner force entered his body. Very soon, Ling Hucheng's drunkenness was completely forced out of his body. Are you sober now? Song Qing-shu snorted coldly. Yes. Ling Hucheng wiped the corner of his mouth, his face blushing and ashamed. Then quickly tell me what happened just now. Song Qing-shu's face was expressionless. Ling Hucheng nodded, and then told him what happened just now in full detail. Are you saying that they wanted you to deliberately lose in the fight with Guijing? Song Qing-shu frowned, thinking. Yes. Ling Hucheng nodded, looking distressed. But I've long heard that Hero Gua is righteous. Why would he do such a thing? Of course it wasn't Guijing's people. Song Qing-shu thought that Guijing wouldn't do such a thing. It would be more likely if it was Huang Rong. However, he quickly denied this speculation. After all, Huang Rong had been with Guijing for years, and she was no longer the evil woman she used to be. I know. It must be Jia Shidao. Ling Hucheng spat out all the wine he had drunk. His mind was much clearer than before, and he quickly analyzed the various interests behind it. Now it seems that Jia Shidao is the most suspicious, but Song Qing-shu had a vague feeling that something was wrong. No buts. Let's go check it out now. Ling Hucheng interrupted him, looking extremely anxious. Chapter 1373. All right. Seeing Ling Hucheng's anxious expression, Song Qing-shu thought that since there were no clues now, he might as well go to the Jia mansion to investigate. However, he was cautious by nature and worried about Ren Yingying's safety. He dared not put all his eggs in one basket, so he said to him, "You go to the Jia mansion to investigate first. I will make some other arrangements and come to you later." Ling Hucheng was burning with anxiety. He casually agreed and used his lightness skill to rush in the direction of the Jia mansion. Although his lightness skill was not as good as Song Qingshu's, it was still first class in Jianghu. After a while, he disappeared in the street. Song Qingshu first found the stronghold of the beggar gang in the city and asked them to send a message to Chen Yuliang, asking him to mobilize the members of the beggar gang to find the whereabouts of Ren Yingying and the black-clothed man in the whole city. Because the members of the beggar gang were very familiar with the streets and alleys of Lin and city, he asked them to pay special attention to whether strangers suddenly appeared in some houses. At the same time, he also asked them to investigate places like haunted houses and abandoned courtyards in the city. Next, he returned to the mansion and informed Lin Pingji about the news of Yu Lingshan's disappearance. He asked him not to panic and to stay in the mansion to deal with the feedback from all sides. Then he went to the inner residence and asked Chen Yuan to stay in the inner residence and not to expose his identity. Then he rushed to the Jiao mansion without stopping. I don't know if Ling Hu Chong has found anything. Looking at the plaque of the Rongwa mansion not far away, Song Qingshu secretly frowned. He had stayed there for a long time as Jia Baoyu. He knew that the Jia mansion was the mansion of a high-ranking official of the imperial court on the surface, but in fact, the security inside was even stricter than that of the imperial palace. If Ling Hu Chong was not careful, he would be exposed. The whole Rongwa mansion was still calm, and there was no sign of disturbance. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment and sneaked in under the cover of the night. Because of the previous experience, Song Qingshu already knew the layout of the Jia mansion. Along the way, he carefully avoided the patrolling guards and hidden sentries. Soon, he arrived at the mansion. Every time he saw the word brothel, Song Qingshu couldn't help but want to start complaining. He didn't know if Jia Baoyu did it on purpose or if she was ignorant and incompetent, but she actually named her residence a brothel. Since the disappearance of Jia Baoyu, it was obviously much quieter in the palace. Song Qingshu found Shiren according to his memory. He first hit the sleeping acupoints of the other maids, and then woke Shiren up. Sensing movement, Shiren opened her eyes in a daze, but what she saw was a pair of pitch-black eyes. Did anything unusual happen in the mansion today? Shiren did not know martial arts, and she was half asleep, so it was easy for Song Qingshu to use the soul transfer technique on her. No, Shiren answered subconsciously. Song Qingshu frowned. Shiren's status in the Jia residence was different from that of the ordinary servant girls. She had always been extremely quick-witted. If anything happened in the Jia residence, it would be impossible to hide it from her. Worried that he had asked the wrong question, Song Qingshu asked again, "Did you catch anyone and bring them back?" Shiren looked a little confused, but she still shook her head mechanically. "I haven't heard of such a thing. That's strange. Where would Ying be taken?" Song Qingshu frowned and hit Shiren's sleeping acupoint. After coming out, Song Qingshu searched aimlessly in the Rongwa mansion. He didn't completely believe what Shiren had said. After all, Shiren did not know martial arts, and Jia Sherdao had many masters under his command. If he acted secretly, it would not be too difficult to hide from the ordinary people in the mansion. After searching the Jia residence for a while, Song Qingshu suddenly heard a woman's indistinct cry for help in the air. Song Qingshu immediately stopped in his tracks. This cry for help was so soft that if it were not for his profound cultivation, he would definitely not have heard it. When he tried to listen carefully, the cry for help disappeared again. If it had been an ordinary person, he might have thought it was an auditory hallucination. However, Song Qingshu was very confident in his hearing. Moreover, he needed to save Ren Yingying, so he would not let go of any clues. Song Qingshu followed the direction of the sound. Because it was just a flash, he was not sure of the specific location. After searching for a while, he was a little lost. Fortunately, after a short while, there came another cry, and Song Qingshu finally found the specific location. Using Qinggong, he quickly came to a side yard. Everywhere else was pitch black, and only the second floor was faintly glowing. Song Qingshu tiptoed and flew to the window on the second floor. "What were you doing?" The woman's voice was full of panic. "It's the middle of the night. a man and a woman alone. What do you think I'm doing? A man's voice was full of lust. Song Qingshu frowned. He could already tell that the woman's voice was not Reninging's. He could not help but feel disappointed. He turned around and was about to leave. If it was any other time, he would not mind saving the beauty. However, now that Rin Ying was in danger, he did not want to waste time. Moreover, in the Jia residence, other than the pair of stone lions at the entrance, there was no place that was clean. There were too many filthy things. Things like this were probably happening all the time. How many times could he stop it? You bastard. According to seniority, I am your aunt. The woman obviously did not expect him to be so shameless. Her voice was full of shock and fear. Song Qingshu stopped in his tracks. Why did this voice sound so familiar? That's just a title and seniority. Honestly speaking, your age is not even as old as mine. You have been a widow for so many years, so you must have been suffering from a drought for a long time. I'm considerate enough to send you some rain. You may have a taste of it. Maybe you'll have a taste of it. The man laughed. Song Qingshu sneaked in quietly. The two people in the room were focused on each other and did not notice the arrival of a third person. He saw a young man, who was wearing a light coat and a precious belt, standing not far away. He had a delicate face and a handsome figure. If he did not have a lewd look at the moment, he would definitely be an elegant young master. Opposite him was an elegant and dignified young woman. She was wearing a plain dress, which faintly outlined her graceful figure. Because she was frightened, her face was no longer as gentle and indifferent as usual. It's her. Song Qingshu recognized this young woman. No wonder he felt that the voice just now was familiar. It turned out to be Li Wan, who had been widowed in her youth. Not to mention that he owed her a favor by asking her father to help in Yu Fei's case. Thinking that she was that person's sister, he could not just stand by and watch. You are rude to me today. Tomorrow, Eunuch and the others will not let you off. Li Wan did not see Song Qingshu hiding in the dark. Looking at Jia Rong, who was approaching her step by step, she could not help but feel a little desperate. Because she was widowed, she was not used to the hustle and bustle of the mansion. Therefore, she specially asked Mrs. Jia to arrange a remote and quiet house for her. Usually, there were only a few maids serving her. Now, those maids had obviously been restrained. This place was far away from people, so no one else could notice the abnormality here. She could only hope that Jia Shidao's usual majesty would make the person in front of her retreat. You are too naive. If your husband was still alive, those people would definitely stand up for you. But now, you are a widow, and I am the eldest grandson of Ningguo Fu. If I really did something to you, even if they were angry, they wouldn't punish me. Instead, they would cover it up for me. When that happens, I would be able to come and play with you more often. The young man laughed coldly. The eldest grandson of the Ningguo mansion, coupled with the young man's age, Song Qingshu had already guessed the young man's identity. He was Jia Zhen's son and Qin Keqing's husband, Jia Rong. After saying that, Jia Rong was obviously stimulated by something. His expression became ferocious. Yes, they will definitely cover it up for me, just like they did before. Seeing him gnashing his teeth, Li Wan was even more scared. Every debt has a debtor. It was your father who bullied Keqing. Why don't you seek revenge from him? Why do you come to me? Although she had not been involved in the affairs of the world for many years, gossip spread fast in this kind of big house. She could always hear some gossip. Song Qingshu secretly sighed. In Dream of the Red Chamber, it was not a secret that Jia Zhen took the place of his daughter-in-law, Qin Keqing. He did not expect that this world still could not change that fate. Shut up, bitch. Li Wan's words greatly stimulated Jia Rong because it happened to poke his weak spot. It was not that he had never thought of seeking revenge on his father, but he had been afraid of his father since he was a child. He couldn't even speak fluently in front of him, so how could he take revenge? On one hand, he hated his weakness. On the other hand, he was suppressed to the extreme. His personality had begun to distort. Since his father took the place of the ashes, why couldn't he climb back up? Therefore, these years, he had been seducing the elders of the family, such as Second Sister Yu. Second Sister Yu is Jia Zhen's wife's sister. so she could be considered Jia Rong's aunt. Not only that, because his second sister Yu was young and beautiful, she was Jia Zhan's secret lover. The moment he entered second sister Yu's body, Jia Rong felt a strong sense of satisfaction. It was as if he had taken revenge in another way. Soon, he began to be obsessed with this feeling. Second sister Yu alone was not enough to satisfy him, so he quickly turned his eyes to others. Although Jia Rong wanted revenge, he did not want to make himself suffer. There were not many young and beautiful people in the family who could be considered as elders. Other than second sister Yu, there was also Wang Shifeng. However, Wang Shifeng was too fierce and strong, so it was not easy to make a move on her. Therefore, he targeted Li Wan, who had been a widow for many years. Li Wan was the eldest young mistress of Rongwo residence. She was dignified and beautiful, especially when he thought of her identity as a widow. Jia Rong could not help but have evil thoughts. Therefore, after careful planning, Jia Rong finally made a move on Li Wan. On one hand, he could satisfy his own desires. On the other hand, he could take revenge on Rongwo residents for letting Jia Zhan climb the ashes and helping to cover it up. At the thought of being able to experience the feeling of being in perfect harmony, Jia Rong trembled with excitement. He could not help but pounce like a hungry tiger. Li Wan's cheeks were flushed, and her voice was so soft that it was almost inaudible. After more than 10 years of womanly education, she was extremely sensitive to the fact that men and women should not touch each other. Realizing that she was still in his arms, she subconsciously gently pushed him away and took 2 steps back. However, as soon as she took a step back, she suddenly felt a chill in the air. Only then did she remember that half of her dress was torn. Thinking that she was almost half naked in front of a strange man, Li Wan instinctively exclaimed. She hurriedly crossed her arms in front of her chest and turned around at the same time. It's not as exposed as the bikini. I don't know why you were so afraid. Song Qingshu couldn't help but complain. However, he also understood that the atmosphere of this society was far less open than that of the later generations. He considerately took off his coat and put it on her, blocking her exposed body. The weather is a bit cold at night. Madam, don't catch a cold. Thank you. His clothes still had a faint heat from his body. Li Wan only felt that her whole body was surrounded by the masculine breath of the man. For a moment, she couldn't help but feel a bit dizzy. It's nothing. Song Qingshu faintly smiled. At this time, Li Wan suddenly noticed that his finger was still bleeding, especially the remaining teeth marks on it. It made her blush even more. I'm sorry. Song Qingshu raised his hand and looked at it. He didn't care and smiled. It's just a superficial wound. It's my fault. Let me blow it for you. At this time, Li Wan's mind was filled with guilt. She always wanted to do something to make up for it. Subconsciously, she grabbed his hand and brought it to her mouth and gently blew it. Looking at the other's slightly pouting mouth, the bright red lips, and the snow-white delicate skin formed a distinct visual impact. For a moment, Song Qingshu couldn't help but be momentarily absent-minded. After Li Wan blew 2 mouthfuls, her actions were coherent, as if it was instinctive. She put her lips on his wound and sucked it for him. She even licked the wound with the tip of her tongue. Song Qingshu was stunned. What was going on? Li Wan was also stunned. Usually, when her hand was accidentally injured, she would blow 2 mouthfuls like this and then suck it with her mouth. Who knew that this time, she actually copied her usual habitual action. Instantly taking Song Qingshu's hand away, Li Wan's face turned red. I didn't mean it. She also didn't know how to explain her behavior just now. She thought, it's over. In his mind, I must be a shameless and fickle woman. Looking at the young woman in front of him, her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. Tears welled up in her eyes as if they would fall at any time. Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. It's good to disinfect the poison like this. Thank you, madam. Li Wan didn't understand what disinfect meant, but she could hear that there was no ridicule in his tone. Even so, she still wished that there was a hole in the ground to hide in. Seeing her face full of shame and indignation, in order to distract her, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but cough lightly and said, "Madam, I actually came here to look for someone this time." Hearing this, Li Wan's heart instantly skipped a beat. Did he come to look for me? A man and a woman alone in the middle of the night. This is improper. Years of education made her feel that his behavior was somewhat lecherous. But thinking that if he hadn't come to look for her in the middle of the night, how could he have saved her? She couldn't help but feel a little worried. Song Qing-shu looked at her strangely and continued to tell her about Ren Yingying's situation. Only then did Li Wan realize that she had misunderstood. Her skin blushed as if it was covered with a layer of rouge. "I'm sorry, I never ask about the world at home. I don't know if the mansion has caught anyone." "I see." Song Qing-shu looked disappointed. When he was about to leave, Li Wan pointed to Jiao Rong, who had fainted on the ground, and said, "Why don't you ask him? He sneaks around all day, so he knows everything that happens in the mansion." Song Qing-shu's eyes lit up. He hurriedly squatted down beside Jiao Rong and tapped a few acupoints on his body to wake him up. Damn you! Jiao Rong had just woken up and subconsciously wanted to curse. But Song Qing-shu was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He directly used the soul-shifting technique on him. "Did the Jiao mansion catch a woman today?" Jiao Rong's eyes became muddled, and he answered subconsciously, "Yes." Song Qing-shu was delighted and hurriedly asked, "Where is she locked up?" "She was caught by my father. She should be locked up in Ningbo Mansion." Jiao Rong answered with some indignation, "Humph, I don't know where he caught the woman from. She's so beautiful that my heart itches when I see her, so I can't help but run here." It turned out that he saw his father catch a beautiful woman and knew that he wouldn't be able to take care of him tonight, so he took the opportunity to secretly run here. Li Wan, who was at the side, blushed and secretly spat. At the same time, she felt strange. Usually, Jiao Rong was very slippery. Why was he so honest today and only answer one question? Hearing the lewd meaning in Jiao Rong's tone, Song Qing-shu became angry and gave him a slap. "Where exactly is she locked up in Ningbo Mansion?" I don't know." Jiao Rong answered with a wronged expression. He was under the soul-shifting technique. Song Qing-shu knew that he wouldn't lie to him. Seeing that he couldn't get any more information out of him, he knocked him out again. "Madam, I'll go and save the people first. Goodbye." Song Qing-shu cupped his hands. Li Wan hurriedly stopped him. Prince Song, can you tell me about the missing sister now?" Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. "I'm in a hurry to save people now. I'll tell you next time." When he thought that Ren Yingying had fallen into the hands of Jiazhan, that old pervert, he was burning with anxiety. Li Wan nodded. "I'm confused. Yes, saving people is more important." Song Qing-shu waved goodbye to her and flew out of the window with Jiao Rong. He used Qing Gong and arrived at the Ningbo mansion next door in a few breaths. He threw Jiao Rong into a secluded alley outside. When Song Qing-shu was about to sneak in, he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and took off Jiao Rong's coat to put it on. In this way, he wouldn't alert Jiao Rong when he sneaked into the Ningbo mansion, in case Jiazhan did something desperate. At the same time, he kicked Jiao Rong's kidney. He didn't want to kill people easily, but he was worried that Jiao Rong would go to Li Wan in the future, which would make it impossible for him to bully women. Only then did Song Qing-shu sneak into Ningbo Fu. He casually captured a servant girl and asked for the location of Jiazhan's residence. Then, he used his Qing Gong and rushed over. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything when he got there. Not only Ren Yingying, but even Jiazhan wasn't there. Later, he grabbed a man and used soul transferring technique. Then he learned that Jiazhan had been called to a meeting by Jia Sherdao of the Rongbo mansion and wasn't in the mansion. Hearing this news, Song Qing-shu was a little relieved. At least Ren Yingying was safe for the time being. Unfortunately, he couldn't find out where Ren Yingying was being held. Song Qing-shu had no choice but to search in the Ningbo mansion with his experience and eyesight. In the end, as he was searching, he suddenly saw a group of maidservants surrounding a young married woman walking over. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu reacted quickly and instantly jumped onto the beam. Otherwise, he wouldn't be discovered. When the other party passed by the beam, she suddenly stopped. Song Qing-shu used the moonlight to size her up. He saw that the young married woman was bright and charming, just like the hairpin he saw at the banquet earlier. She was elegant and graceful, just like a piece of jade. He could not help but secretly exclaim in admiration. There were many beauties in the Jiao Manor, but this woman was the best. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.